What is up, Noel Nation? Florida State gets upset by Georgia Tech to start the season 0-1. Just not really what we were hoping for. It kind of looked pretty bad there. We're just going to kind of get into this thing. We're going to do some, just give our raw reactions, give some thoughts here. Let's see. Let me see real quick. We're going to just kind of let some people get in here real quick. Probably gonna probably gonna want to take a look at these comments here and see what maybe we can. I don't know if we want to keep these on the screen. We might get banned from YouTube, but uh, let's see here. So yeah, man, it's just pretty disappointing. You know what I mean? Overall, I think that was just rough. Um, Not what you wanted to see. I mean, yeah, you lost. Like that hurt on its own part. That hurt on its own right, 100%. But at the same time, I think a lot of it was really, really kind of how it looked. I think that was more concerning for me. I think as we'll get into this, and of course we'll do more in depth in here as we get into the show. But yeah, man, I think it was pretty alarming stuff. I think, you know what I mean? Just kind of the way I think we got kind of sold a bill of goods on a few things, especially in the trenches. But we're going to get into some stats. We're going to do some stuff like that, man. I will say two things to get to this. We don't want to go nuclear here, right? I don't think we want to do that because this is not the way that we should be. And there's still a lot of football left to go. I will remind you that there was an Ohio State team that started 0-1 against Virginia Tech and then went on to win the national championship. So there's that. But I got my post game drink of misery, and I might just put a little bit of this raid in here real quick. I'm gonna put a little bit of raid in there to go with it. But Michael, I'm gonna see if I can figure out some of these comments and stuff like that. So just give me some overall thoughts on your initial takeaways from this upset loss.
Yeah, man. Can you send some of that raid over here? I feel like we all need some a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of a damper to the start of college football season for us Florida State fans. I mean, there's no messing around. There's no sugarcoating what we saw out there. It was the words I used to you on text message was hot garbage. And that's not to be nuclear. That's just to point, just to be as objective as we possibly can. I mean, what we saw out there was not what we expected of FSU. I think a lot of the media reports, a lot of the stuff we read throughout the summer and into the fall camp did not show up. Now, again, this is game one, so I will say that this is game one. But what you saw was a complete domination by the Georgia Tech offensive line against that Florida State vaunted defense. I heard Pete Thamel say that NFL scouts said that this will be, one of the best defensive lines in the country this year, and it did not show up at all. I mean, they had a couple of tackle for losses during the game, but for the most part, Georgia Tech just did what it wanted on that line. And then on the other side of it, Georgia Tech's defense was able to, in a lot of ways, manhandle Florida State's offensive line. Now, again, I think you have to qualify that with the fact that Georgia Tech did a lot of blitzing. When they did not blitz, Florida State was able to have success. So I will say that. It wasn't just the front four of Georgia Tech that handled FSU offensive line. They did do a lot of exotic blitzing, which we should have anticipated from Santucci, who came over from Duke, who's under the Mike Elko tree, and that's what Mike Elko likes to do, especially on third downs. You saw a lot of different exotic blitzing. I was very disappointed in some of the play calling for Mike Norvell. I thought when it became very clear that we could not run, thought he should have, maybe opened up the offense a lot more. As you saw in that last drive, when they went down to tie the game up, when they opened up the offense, they were able to move it. And then lastly, what I'll say, Jesse, and I'll toss this back to you, is I was very disappointed. I'll just use that word in this game with the wide receivers. I thought they couldn't get separation when they needed to. Yes, DJU missed a couple wide open receivers. But for the most part, the Georgia Tech defense, which did come into the season from last season ranked 53rd, but they lost, some corners from that last year's team. I thought Florida State might have a little bit more success throwing the ball there, but as it showed out, the running backs were the best receivers of the day, except for that Cam Davis drop. Gosh, I think changed the game. But so yeah, I mean, just overall disappointed in the way we opened this season. It ends a 17-game regular season win streak that was actually surprisingly, Jesse, started against Georgia Tech in 2022 at Doak Campbell Stadium. So again, the rambling wreck Florida State.
Yeah. And okay, so I don't think the comments are showing up on the screen. We can see them on our screen. We'll get to some of the comments. I just don't want to get in trouble because I'm sure there's going to be some things fired off in this one. But yeah, man. So I'll share some of my overall thoughts too. I think that to start with, I will say that like this Georgia Tech team, give them credit. I think they came ready for this game. That's probably a better team than people think. They just got a tough schedule, so it may not look great on the win-loss column. We had talked about this for a lot of the build up to this game that, don't sleep on this team. This was one that was disappointing. With that being said, it was still an embarrassing performance. You still can't get pushed around like this in the line of scrimmage by Georgia Tech. And, I think that it was, I do have to look back too. Like, this is not to be like, who was right and who was wrong or anything like that. But, people call me crazy when I look, you look back to that 5 most important games of 2024. And I said Georgia Tech was number 1.
Yeah,
I thought this was the most important game of the season because of what you were going to see from a team that you didn't know a lot about. I've said repeatedly on the show before that I don't like relying on other people's opinion and their view of practice and what they get to see at practice because, we were sold all offseason, like you said, man, with this was going to be a dominant defensive line, a dominant offensive line. And today it looked the exact opposite of that. And that's why I hate having to do that. I said, when you play this Virginia or Georgia Tech team, if you were to lose, it would flip the entirety of the outlook of your season on its head. And that's exactly what it's done. Yeah. That was about the only thing I was right about. You know what I mean? But I do want to say at the same time, it was one game. There's a lot of football left to play. Some of the things in here are concerning because they're going to have to get cleaned up. I think a lot of the stuff with defense, my main concern was the defensive line not getting pushed and getting pushed around. You had one quarterback hurry the entire game. They put up almost 200 yards rushing. Now, I mean, that's what they do. That's what Georgia Tech does. I think I was concerned about that. I thought we'd be better against the run. A lot of it early on looked like they were out of place. And, those types of things can be fixed. Now, the offense, man, I have to say that I know people are coming for DJ. I get that. But I actually probably put this more on Norvell and the receivers.
I agree.
Than I do with DJU because, when they kind of let him out of the box a little bit, he made a couple of decent throws. Now, yes, he wasn't perfect. He missed some reads. He probably had some checkdowns that he shouldn't have. He missed a Jaylen Brown there on a crucial play over the middle. He missed the read completely. He wasn't perfect. We didn't expect him to be. Right. But it was almost like Mike Norvell was trying to win this game like he was trying to win the Louisville game and the Florida game last year. He was trying to play it safe on offense, let the defense win the game. And to me, when you saw the defense was having trouble stopping them, you got to switch styles, man. You got to make some different calls. And, for me, it's like if it looked like a lot of times he did not trust his quarterback to throw the ball. And if you're not going to trust him to throw the ball, why did you bring him here?
That's right.
That's my biggest thing. You either let him throw the ball or you put in Brock Glenn and you let him throw the ball. You got to let somebody throw the ball because we said all offseason this was going to be a rush-heavy team. This was going to be a team that was led by that ground game. And when the ground game became essentially ineffective because they loaded the box, what did we talk about in the pregame show? We said you run the ball, you run the ball, you run the ball. Then when they load the box to stop it, you hit them over top. And what did we do? We ran the ball until they loaded the box, and then we ran the ball into a loaded box. And I just don't understand that part of the play calling. I do think early on, I don't blame them for how they called the game a little bit to try and get DJU in rhythm. He had a 70% completion percentage for what it's worth. We've never seen that from DJU. But I think you should have mixed some shots in there with it. Now, one of the other reasons I don't put this all on DJU is because, like you said, man, I think we were talking about this before we came on. I think the receivers were ineffective in this game. And this is what we've been worried about all offseason. Malik Benson made a couple of plays when you gave him a chance. And
that's right.
Here's the thing too, for me that we were talking about before the show was like, do you put the receiver part on DJU or do you put it on the receivers? Well, the running backs made plays in the pass
That's
game.
right. That's
The
right.
receivers did not. So I think I put that more on lack of receivers more than I do anything else because,
Yep.
again, the running backs were effective in the pass game. And so I think you're going to need somebody to step up in that receiver room. I thought the drop off from losing those guys last year would be bad. I didn't think it would be quite like this.
Yeah.
Now, if you want a little bit of positivity, Hakeem Williams was not available for
That's
today.
right.
I understand that he's been inconsistent in camp, but if you get him back, that's a big-bodied, talented wide receiver. That could very much help because you didn't see a whole lot of separation from this receiver group downfield. And Georgia Tech had a decent pass defense last year. I think my biggest takeaway on offense was the run game struggling.
Yeah.
You only rushed
Yeah.
for 98 yards, and this was a team that gave up over 200 yards a game last season. I thought we'd hit 180 to 200 this year. You just had 3.2 yards per rush. That was pretty rough. You were held under 291 yards. And Mike Norvell said in the postgame that they have to get more explosive plays. And I think everybody collectively probably went, no shit. You know what I mean? Like that we were screaming that the whole game. It's funny because even before they did the pass to Malik Benson on what felt like my friend Jeff was texting me telling me that that felt like the 4th and 14. And it
Yeah.
really did because
Yeah,
it was
did.
like it felt like the game was going to be essentially over if you didn't complete that.
Yep.
And I was sitting here like I'm screaming at my TV, run the damn ball. I mean, throw the ball.
Yeah.
The ball. Stop running the ball. And then they throw
Yeah.
it and boom, there you go.
Boom.
So it's like, man, I have a lot of questions with the play calling, but I just have to say that I think this is a situation where one game, and this is something that Mike Norvell said, one game cannot define your entire season. And so I think you definitely have to just kind of pick yourself up and go back to work, man. I mean, you still got to play the other games. You can't just cancel the season. So
Yeah.
you got to go back and you got to go to the drawing board and you got to figure out what you can and you can't do. And, you have to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Mike Norvell, when he goes back to look at the film, he's going to be very disappointed in himself that he didn't go to the passing game sooner. Now, I get it that the wide receivers weren't really giving you a lot of separation, but listen, this is a wide open offense. You can scheme these wide receivers open. I told you in the pregame, one of the things that was most disappointing about the play call was the fact that they ran a screen. I think it was in the first half, and it picked up really big yards. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the second half, picked up really big yards. And they did not go to the screen game again. They called one screen. They didn't run a bubble. They didn't run a wide receiver screen, tight end screen, nothing. Just one running back screen, did not. But that one screen they called went for big yards, and they did not go back. When you have a blitzing defense, when that defense is sending its safety and its linebackers to you, you have to run a screen into that blitz, right? Run a screen into that blitz because he's going to run for 20, 30, 40 yards. Why? And Mike Norvell is usually really good about picking that up. So I don't know if the guys upstairs or whoever it is relaying the information to him that they didn't see it. I don't know what it was, but I was screaming at my team, run the screen, call a screenplay, throw the ball. Georgia Tech was hell-bent on stopping the run. They were bringing down the safety. They were blitzing their linebackers. They were blitzing corners. They were bringing blitz everywhere. There were very few plays where it was just the down linemen. And when Georgia Tech had the down linemen, just the down linemen rushing, Florida State was able to complete passes and do all that. So again, I was just. And I'm a huge Mike Norvell fan. I think he's one of the best play callers in the game, if not top 3 play callers in the game. I was very disappointed. Jesse, I throw this back to you. I just wonder, did he come into the game thinking a couple things? Did he think, okay, we're just going to play it safe. We're going to go with a vanilla offense. That should win us the game. Did he not trust these wide receivers enough and he thought his run game would be better? Or did he not trust DJ enough to throw the ball as much as he should have? I mean, again, he did throw the ball 27 times. That doesn't count the sacks that he got sacked on or whatever. But again, when you realize that the passing game is the thing that's working and the offensive line isn't holding up, why not switch to that?
No, I agree. And I would almost say that he's maybe guilty of trusting his defense a little more than he should.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that maybe he could get away with what he did against Florida and Louisville last year, where they just kind of, again, they just played vanilla on offense. They did what they had not to lose, and they didn't have any turnovers. So, I mean, like, they did what they were, they played safe with the ball, but you can't play safe all the time. And, the thing, it's funny because like the things that you talk about that their defense did was basically the same thing our defense should have done and
Yes.
didn't do.
Yes.
That's the part that's so frustrating. And so, yeah, man, I think maybe he thought they had more at wide receiver than maybe they actually do. Um, because I mean, he's talked about how DJU took control of this offense. He's talked about what he brings as a passer. You've seen all the things that they've been able to DJ's able to do with his arm, and then you just didn't. It's like you refuse to use it. I
Yeah.
just again like early on, like I said, man, I get the play calling to get him in rhythm to kind of settle
Yeah.
things into the game, but like you brought in a deep ball thrower and you refused to test that defense to stretch that
One
secondary, and then
one shot.
when you got when you were able to push the ball, it looked a little bit better. Now, I will say DJ's accuracy was a little bit off. The one he threw in the dirt to Ja'Kai probably
Oh
would have been a touchdown had
gosh.
that have been Jordan Travis.
2 shot. Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, I think the biggest problem was even when you get into the they were loading the box situation, then it's kind of like, man, you should have seen that. You should have adjusted, like you said. You should have ran pressure beating play calls, and that just wasn't really what they did. And so
Yeah.
it's just frustrating, man. But again, you just gotta go back to work, and you gotta get to fix this thing. Now, I will say, like, we're gonna reset our win projections and stuff like that going forward. We're not gonna we're not gonna jump off the cliff already.
No.
There's still a lot of football left to play, and I think Georgia Tech is a decent team. But we're gonna reset our win-loss stuff and go over some stats in this game coming up. But man, I will say that like I'm not pulling the alarm yet. I'm not doing that yet. I still trust that they can get some things corrected here. I will say that my hand is on the alarm. And if you lose the next one against Boston College, which makes me concerning because you have to face another mobile quarterback, another decent rushing attack. Again, you gave up 200, almost 200 yards rushing today. If you count the negative plays, take those out, you actually gave up 217 rushing yards in this game. And so, you know, you get Thomas Castellanos and a good running team next week or next game. And so if you lose that one, yeah, I'm yanking the alarm. But we'll get to some comments real quick. We do have one from Steve Williams here that says rebuilding year. Man, I got to say that, like, looking at this, I think that you do have to readjust some expectations now that you've seen some things. I think that this team still has the potential to be good. I just don't think maybe we have the potential, the ceiling that we thought. You know what I mean? Obviously, my 12-0 ceiling is already that ceiling has already fallen on my head.
That ceiling is lower.
And I had said that I thought if some things looked bad, that maybe your floor was 8-4, and so we'll go with that too. But I will at least say, like, this year may deal with some pains. You know what I'm saying? Like it may be not the year we wanted to, but if you, and again, guys, like, we're going to be real, we're going to give it to them where they need to be given it to, but we do want to, remain somewhat positive here, even after this disappointing loss. If you want to put your hat on something, and again, I put a lot of this on the coaching. That had not a whole lot to do with the players, but there was there was piss poor tackling in this one. That part too. But I also think that when you look at this roster, right, the most of your talent, most of your good guys that you feel like are going to be future stars are young guys. And so, like, if you do have a rebuildish type of year, that doesn't mean it's all over from here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as long as everybody doesn't transfer out, and I don't think that is going to be the case. But I think that you have a lot of talent going forward that you can be encouraged about the future of this team. It just might be an 8-4, 9-3 type of season, because there's a lot of teams. But I also want to, and I'll kick it back to you for some additional thoughts while I look through some of these comments. But I do think one thing that gets heightened here, of course, we're going to look at this from our perspective, and this was a really disappointing loss. There's no way around it. But you were literally the game one of the season. You were the only thing on TV. You were the international game. You were the only week 0 game that really matters. All the focus was on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all the focus was on you. And so if you come back and you beat BC next game, and then maybe you beat Memphis, and then week 1 happens, and there's some other games to distract people from, you can move on from this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to wear it right now because we're the only thing on the TV. And so that's going to be a little bit tough, man. But, I don't think the season's over. I just think you have to reset your expectations.
Yeah, I don't think the season's over by any means, obviously, because we still got 11 games to go. So, Steve, with your rebuilding comment, I think I think Florida State going into the season was no, this is a reload. We're basically just moving people up, putting more in the chamber there. After this game, I don't believe it's a rebuild. I still think it's a reload. The problem is that the reloading wasn't ready. If I can put it that way, they just weren't ready. Either 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 that defensive line wasn't ready to face a a offensive line like Georgia Tech, or they just weren't ready. They got too swept up in all the motions. I mean, Jesse, I texted you during the game that that Georgia Tech runs more motion than a boat on a stormy ocean. Like, I mean, it was just insane how every play had a jet motion, had at least two different motions happening: a tight end or the wide receiver adjusting over the running back, adjusting to either side, and then a jet motion across. And so you just saw the defensive line, whether they forgot their assignment, whether they forgot their keys, and the linebackers definitely forgot their keys many times on those drives. I think with the offense in particular, I have a lot of question marks about this offensive line. This offensive line was supposed to be better. It's supposed to be better than last year. It was supposed to be able to allow for Mike Norvell to run the ball a lot better, which is what he loves to do. That sets up the pass. And then you saw it very clearly. They were not able to do that outside of that first drive. Every drive after that, they were getting 2 to 3 yards at most in the game. Now, again, to qualify that, Georgia Tech was blitzing a lot. And so what was frustrating, again, is that Mike Norvell did not call a game based on the blitz. Like, why not call more passing plays? Why not also call more passing plays with an easy hot route so that you can get the ball out pretty quickly? Instead, we're running play action fakes where DJ is turning his back to the defense and then having the scramble. And then, yes, he missed a couple wide open receivers. Cam Davis had a drop. He missed Jaylen Brown coming on an in route that was wide open that probably goes for 15 or 20 yards there. Again, but then you see him on that drive, the last drive Florida State had where they tied the game up 21-21, where, I mean, he's throwing the ball, he's making great throws, converts 2 fourth down plays in that drive to get the touchdown. And so you saw a lot of bad, but you also saw some snippet of good. You saw windows of good. And so is it correctable? I think that's the biggest question. Is this correctable on the offensive side? I know we'll get to the defensive side, but is it correctable on an offensive side? Well, I think the offensive line can be corrected, and it will be dependent on how you deal with blitzing, because now teams are going to know if you blitz Florida State, it gets them off course, as a lot of blitzing does anyways, but it really affects this offensive line there. They didn't make adjustments to it, so you're going to blitz. So I think that's fixable. Your wide receivers, them getting separation, getting opening, that's skill set. That I don't think unless you scheme it open more, which Mike Norvell can, I don't know if you can fix that. I think this is the receiving group we have. Again, like you said, Jesse, you got Hakeem Williams coming back at some point. So hopefully that might give you another high talented, big body receiver that could maybe change the game there. I think, man, I definitely think missing Destiny Hill today, it showed, because you have a burner that could get open. I think Lucas, while he's really fast, I mean, he's small. And so there were a couple plays that he was lined up and they just got covered up. I think Ja'Kai Douglas was the only one that really, outside of Malik Benson, that stepped up in the game. He had that great toe tap that was initially ruled incomplete. So, yeah, I think some of this is correctable. And I think that gives you a better chance that this season doesn't go off the rails. I said the floor was, for me, was I think I said 9-3, and I think I'll have to adjust that. I might have to adjust that to 7-5, believe it or not, because think about it. You could only afford 2 ACC losses before you're pretty much out of the ACC championship game.
Yeah,
and now you have 1. And you still have Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, SMU on the road, right, to face. I mean, those are 4 already hard games that you got to play already right there.
Yeah.
And then I'm not even counting the Notre Dame game that you have at Notre Dame. And so yeah, I think for me, my floor has now dropped about 7-5.
Now, if you want to know, like, we have to give credit where credit is due. This game was not entirely negative. I have to at least give a shout out to Ryan Fitzgerald. My
Yes,
goodness, son. Can
come
he play
on.
can he play quarterback and just kick it to the receivers? Because, like, dude, 52 was like, okay, we're gonna do this, huh? And then 59 was like, okay, we're gonna
That's right.
do this, huh? And he nailed
That's
both of
right.
them. He had both of them by 60. So, like, first off, I do want to give a shout out to Ryan Fitzgerald because he
Yes,
did, even
Fitzy.
in a loss, man, he killed it. But yeah, I think a lot of this, I do think there is some fixable. I think there is an opportunity to go back to the drawing board. You do have a little bit of a long layover to get back to Tallahassee before you get Boston College. What makes me nervous about Boston College is they've had all offseason to prepare for you. You get a little bit of extra time, to prepare for them, but not an entire offseason. And I think this game showed you a little bit of, or at least Mike Norvell and them, what this team is good at and what it's not, and
Yeah.
the areas where they have to make some changes. And I think you are going to see him let DJU throw the ball a little bit more. And I mean, like, to look at this comment here from the Pit Road podcast, his last drive was great. I believe they should have let him rip it earlier. I
Yeah,
100% agree. And I think
I
now
agree.
that you know that you can't run the ball like you thought you could, you're going to have to find it, because let's be honest, man, that Georgia Tech defense was one of the worst ones you're going to face all season.
That's right.
And so I think you're going to have to let DJU throw the ball. Again, why did you bring him here if you're not going to let him throw the ball?
That's right.
But I think there's also a lot of things that maybe now that you see with the receiver, I thought that when you look at the speed that we had, right, you thought for sure we were just going to be taking the top off the defense every
That's
other
right.
play. It was just going to
You
be like
did.
Malik Benson 60 yards down the field doing jumping jacks past the DB. I think that now that you realize that maybe that's not the plan anymore, I think I was really kind of confused why we didn't run more slants, more crossing routes, to let those speedy guys work in space at least, and
More
not just try and
screens.
outrun
Yep.
the DB. Right. And so, I think that was a big question mark for me of why they didn't do that. I think you will see more of that too. And that's the play that Malik Benson had. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where he made that big catch was that slant over the middle. And it was like he was able to make space with his speed. You don't really have the big body receiver that's going up and getting it anymore, like
That's
Johnny.
right.
And so, it's just, again, man, it was tough. You had some errant throws by DJU, but I don't, again, man, like I've seen in a lot of people in the comments saying that, like, I don't really put this on DJU. And I will
No.
say for what it's worth, I don't know that DJU he's not as comfortable in this offense as Jordan Travis. I don't think he's
Correct.
just going to walk up to the line of scrimmage and change every play that Mike Norvell calls. I don't think he has that comfort level like Jordan Travis does right now. And so I put a lot of the play calling on Mike Norvell, right? It's
Yes.
not like we saw him going up there making a lot of play changes and audibles and stuff like that. So I think that's the big thing. But yeah, when you talk about the season outlook and the record total, I think you need a couple things to happen. Like, you need Georgia Tech to go on and be kind of good. That would help.
Yeah.
Maybe they at least are chaos agents and pull a few upsets. But I do think when you lose one ACC game with the way and again, hey, look, what do they say? Warren Buffett used to say, everyone who you get exposed for swimming naked when the tide goes down. Like, we're the only one in the water right now. There's some
That's
other
right.
teams that still got to play. There could be
That's
some
right.
other teams that could be surprising too when they lose, if they come out and lose. But I do think that when you lose this game, I think you lose obviously you lose the ability to control your own destiny.
Yeah.
But I think from here on out, you pretty much have to win out. You know what I mean? To get that ACC bid, I think you're going to have to win every other ACC game, because I don't know, man, as a 2-loss ACC team, I don't know that you make it into the title game. That's going to be tough. And this also really hurts from an at-large perspective. So you're going to have to probably win out. That's what we talked about with that Ohio State game against Virginia Tech. They lost that first game,
Yeah.
but then they came on, and it's not like Virginia Tech was great that year.
Right. They
So,
weren't.
you're going to have to get out there, and you're going to have to go and win every game. And with Miami on the schedule, with Clemson on the schedule, with Notre Dame on the schedule, you'll have your opportunity
Yeah.
to erase this loss. You will have that opportunity. I mean, I think too, like, the LSU win last year didn't get us into the playoffs.
Nope.
So you can't necessarily say that the Georgia Tech loss is going to keep us out of the playoffs, because, the farther away you get, it's kind of that, what have you done for me lately? But I still think you're going to have to, you're going to have to flip a light switch. This is
Yeah.
not something that I think you just marginally get better.
Yeah.
and it's going to fix itself. I think you need to take a massive step. I think you have to get better in a big way and fast, because if you turn around and lose that BC game, that's bad, man. That's really,
Yeah.
really bad. I think at that point, and I'll just say this again, I'm not trying to panic or hit the alarm or freak out or anything like that. But I think I think this team can still rebound and win some games, right? I do think that too. I think my ceiling for this team, I said I had us at 12-0. I would probably put our ceiling now at 10-2, maybe. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's like they really took a gut check on this and fixed some things. And I do want to say this too, man. We've seen DJ Lundy be effective. We've seen Josh Farmer and Pat Payton be
Yeah.
effective. We've seen a lot of these guys. Sione Loholeha was a all-conference player in the Pac-12. We know the secondary, they didn't give up a lot in the past. We know that we've seen this offensive line do well before. Not this particular one, but some of the players on there. We've seen them do well. So, and the running backs I thought did well in the first quarter. The first couple of drives, they were killing it, man. But I
Yeah.
think there is some things there that are like, maybe this was uncharacteristic, because I saw a comment that said, it really Fitzgerald was the only one that played up to his potential, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that everybody had a bad game. Now you can't keep stacking bad games. You know what I'm saying? That's not the way to go. You have to figure out how to fix some of these things, but I do think there is potential for this team to get better. I would put our floor, yeah, man. I got to put our floor somewhere near like 7-5. As
Yeah.
bad as that sounds, because you got SMU, you got Clemson, you got Notre Dame, you got Miami, you even got UNC and stuff like that. So I think you're going to have to make some vast improvements. I would even go as far to say I don't put this on DJU, like I've already said, but let's just say you go into that Clemson game. I think DJU is going to be your starter at least until the Clemson game. But let's say you screw around, you lose a couple games, you drop that SMU, you drop that Clemson game. You're like 3-3 going into the 7th game. I think you might see Brock Glenn. You might see him start making a little bit of a youth movement towards the future. I know that's not what we want to hear, but if you theoretically get eliminated from the playoffs, maybe it's time to start looking forward instead of kind of letting somebody just thanks for coming, we'll let you finish the season out. I think you got to do what you got to do for the future, man.
Yeah. No,
And I will say one thing too, like there were a lot of mistakes in this one, man. There was like you talked about before, 3 fumbles, you didn't get any of them back.
ugh,
I think the Cam Davis drop on that second
uh,
drive really, I'm not gonna say it cost you the game, but it killed all the
it
momentum that you
changed the
had.
game.
That
Yeah.
was a easy money play. That was a first down. Probably would have set you up for a touchdown there, to take the lead back. I think it was like what 7-7 at that
It was
time, or
8-7.
8-7. How about swinging gate, man? I thought
Oof.
I thought Mike was going for all the points.
I thought he
Um,
was.
I think that really hurt you there. You had the punt that went into normally you get a touchback there,
Right.
or not down inside the 20, you had a touchback there. There was a lot of little just dumb things, but overall, man, I have to say that I think the tackling was one of the most concerning. Drop passes were a little bit of a
Yep.
concern, which is something that we've seen continue to rear its head in Tallahassee. But I think a lot of this, again, man, I put a lot of this on the coaching, and I hate to
Yeah.
say that, because I
Yeah.
think we have been a team that has always relied on that coaching advantage. But I think
Yeah.
some of that also does have to come back to when they start to see things aren't effective. When this D line is not effective, when your O line, you can't run the ball and
That's
it's
right.
not effective, then I think they had to change their game plan. But I don't think they did that. I think they should have continued to air the ball out a little bit, and they just didn't. But we'll look at some numbers here real quick. Not that we want to do that, but we'll look at some numbers here. Success rate, Florida State was at 40%. Georgia Tech was up at 58. Yards per play, you were at 5.02 yards per play. You gave up 6.46. That's not great. That's a little concerning there. Explosive play rate, you were at 9%. They were at 10%. Havoc rate, you were only at 8%. And I think that really, to me, was one of the most disappointing things, because you knew you had a good defensive line. You knew you had a great secondary. I know you talked about this before, where you felt like with that secondary, they could have left those guys on an island
Yeah.
when they showed you that they could not effectively really pass against you. So you could have, which we got freaking lucky that they missed that one touchdown pass wide open that Haynes King missed. But when they showed you they couldn't really pass effectively, like
Right.
you said, man, I think you should have started bringing help from the secondary, because you felt good enough about your secondary that you could hold those guys in check. But you just didn't, and I think you
Right.
should have left them again. I think you should have went some safety blitzes or brought the linebackers or something. And I mean, I think this linebacker group is not nearly as athletic as I thought. I think you're going to see a lot more of Blake Nicholson this season because he is more athletic guy. You saw the one where DJ Lundy, man, he made a beautiful read on that one run
Yes,
play
he
that he
did.
blew up in the
Yep.
backfield, but then he took the wrong direction on that pass to the running back, and I mean he just doesn't have the closing speed. Now you did give up 12% havoc rate to the defense, which I thought was a little concerning. You also got away
Yep.
with you got a massive break when Robert Scott comes off the bench and gives up a huge sack, but you get the personal foul on the face mask there. You got really lucky on that one.
Yeah.
So you caught a
Yes.
couple of breaks too. As bad as things
Yeah, you
went,
did.
they missed a wide open pass, they missed a field goal, and you got lucky on that sack. So man, it could have been worse. I will say that. I mean, it could have been worse. There are a few mistakes that maybe you could have won the game on, but it could have been a lot worse too. And I think that's what's concerning. They're just going to have to, man, they are really going to have to make some wholesale fixes before that next game.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting for the coaching staff to try to figure out where was the disconnect when they watched the film.
Yeah.
Like what was going on? What was happening? Was it the preparation? Did they not get in, was it not good enough? Did the scout team not give them a great enough look? Like, I thought that because Georgia Tech runs a very similar offense to what Mike Norvell, has typically run. Now, Mike Norvell will adapt his offense towards the players, so it's never the same. But typically, you see a lot of what Georgia Tech did, what Mike Norvell runs, and so I thought that would be an advantage for Florida State's defense. They would be able to see that. Well, apparently, it was an advantage for Georgia Tech because Georgia Tech was able to understand, like, okay, after they got ran through like sliced butter on that first drive, they adjusted. I think this is what's more frustrating when we talk about the defensive side of the ball, is they adjusted to what Florida State was doing by sending more in the box, by attacking the line of scrimmage, and by daring Florida State to throw the ball. I mean, they left their corners on an island, right?
Yeah.
They dared Florida State. They ran corner blitzes, they ran safety blitzes, they ran linebacker blitzes. They had one or two linemen with their hands in the ground, and they ran. They brought it from all over, and Florida State never adjusted to it. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we didn't adjust to the running game. I mean,
Yeah.
Georgia Tech decided in the second half. Now, yes, Georgia Tech had, I think, 4 drives in the second half, if I'm correct, right?
4. Let me see, hang on.
Yeah, 4 or 5 drives. 4, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4 drives. Georgia Tech had 4 drives, and they scored on 2 of the 4, 14 points. They scored touchdowns. I'm sorry, they scored 10 points. They scored a touchdown on their 3rd drive and scored a field goal on their 4th drive, right? To the game-winning field goal there. And they adjusted. They just kept running the ball, even though they had a couple of 3 and outs. They just ran the ball. They just kept running the ball. They believed that at some point it was going to break. At some point, this defense was going to get lost. And then, of all things, and I'll say this again, we had 2 chances in the second half to get the ball. They had turnovers, and we could not recover. We had 1 turnover in our hands, Jesse, in our hands.
Yep.
And we just let it skirt it out. That would have ended that game tying. It was already tied, but that would have ended them driving to score 21 points, their 21st point, and then we could have got the ball and done something with it. And it's just, it just blew me away that when you have Marvin Jones Jr., Daryl Jackson, Josh Farmer, and Pat Payton. Pat Payton was MIA. I mean,
I was as effective in the game as Pat Payton was.
Exactly. I mean, the only time you heard his name was when they were like, "Here's Pat Payton. Maybe he can do something," and then nothing. And so it just blows me away at, like, where the media that covers practice, were they lying, or are they just not as good as we thought they were, and they just look great against that terrible the offensive line that might not be as good as we thought they were too as well. And so, again, I think someone said in the comments earlier that this game was won and lost, absolutely, in the trenches. But I love Mike Norvell. I think he's an incredible coach. I don't want anybody else coaching Florida State. For those of you who are saying that he should be fired, you're being ridiculous right now. You got emotions. I get it. You're upset. We just lost. I get it. But it's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. Right. But this was not one of his best called games. He was clearly outcoached from a offensive standpoint, and Adam Fuller was clearly outcoached from a defensive standpoint. And yes, I saw someone said we miss Alex Atkins. I wonder if Alex Atkins was here, if he could have maybe found the adjustment that they needed. I mean, gosh, couldn't you get him on the phone at halftime? Be like, bro, I know you're at the pub right now, but you watching the game? What do we need to do?
No, I agree, man. I think the lack of pressure by the defensive line was extremely concerning. That was one of the biggest takeaways for me. The fact that Marvin Jones couldn't get anything, and none of them really could get any pressure, and that was concerning. And I do think, because it's coming up in the comments now, I want to touch on two things. Talking about the people that cover it and that have access. It's the truth, man. I know someone even said in the comments, like, "Oh, y'all lied to us all offseason." Someone lied to us.
Someone lied to us.
Right. Like, we don't have access to practice. We have no choice but to go off of their opinions. Of course, we think these guys can be good. We don't, we don't not think these guys can be good. But, we had said for the most part of the offseason, like I said, for those of you that weren't here earlier, I said this Georgia Tech game was the most important game of the season because I thought it was going to teach us a lot about this team. I thought we had a lot of potential, but we had to see it. We needed to see it because this was a lot of new pieces. And it did not go anything like what we had been described all off season. So hopefully in the future we'll have some access and we can make our own opinions. Maybe they just don't know what they're watching. Most of them have been doing it for a long time. But that's the problem with where we're at. I've said on the show 100 times that I hate relying on other people's opinion because we are at the mercy of their evaluations. You really didn't have a whole lot of reason to believe that this team wasn't going to be at least okay. But, we had always said that we had questions about that wide receiver group. We had said where the offensive line should be good, but we need to see it because they took a step back last year. And we talked about how, Richie Leonard was part of a bad Florida offensive line. I told you I didn't think that Richie or TJ Ferguson was going to start over Keandre Jones because his history at Alabama wasn't great. We said in our win-loss prediction where I said I thought our floor was 8-4. I said, what if DJU ain't that guy? What if this offensive line isn't what they've told us it is? But we have to go off of that because that's all we have. But there was a lot of areas that I was concerned. I mean, when you look at third downs, man, I dropped the third and Charles Kelly there towards the end after they, I was like, man, when they had that one where he fumbled the snap, I was like, bro, we are about to have that Miami Georgia Tech moment where they're going to end up, it's going to flip and the curse is going to blow up on them. And then you give up 12 yards on 3rd and 18. And I mean, that's inexcusable, man. You just cannot do that. But again, when you can't get any pressure with your front four, this is like, the one thing we said in the Georgia Tech preview, one thing that I did mention was that you needed to be able to get pressure on Haynes King, but you didn't need to devote a lot of resources to it because you want to sit back and coverage on him. But the problem is you got literally no pressure from your defensive line. I think we had one quarterback hurry the entire game. And so, I mean, you're 5 of 12 on third downs, 41.7%. You gave up an average of 13.5 yards per attempt on third down. So, like, it's just, I don't understand it, man. I don't understand how you are that bad on third downs. It's just, that's the part I think that's frustrating. And some of the things that we thought were going to be our strength, right? Those are some of the things that look like complete weaknesses in this game. And a lot of that is in the trenches. And so I think that is the part that's concerning because, again, man, like I said, Norvell can adjust his scheme. I don't think we should fire him. A lot of people are saying that. That's kind of crazy talk. I don't think we should do that. I think he's a good coach. I think he will learn from this. I mean, it's obviously going to change the complete outcome of your season. You're going to have to make some change. You're going to have to take some more risks because you got to start winning some games. But at the same time, I think a lot of it was like, you have to reset your expectations because what you thought was going to be the strength. We thought this defensive line was going to be world beaters. We thought that offensive line was just going to be able to lean on people and you were going to be able to run for 180, 200 yards a game. And I think the defensive line might be a little bit less concerning. And the reason I say that is because Georgia Tech's offensive line is good. We said in a preview, they returned 4 out of 5 guys. 2 of those are all ACC guys. They only gave up 15 sacks on the entire season last year. They ran the ball for over 5 yards an attempt. This was a really good offensive line. This is probably one of the best offensive lines you're going to see on the entire season. But I think what's more concerning for me was the offensive line and the lack of run push, the lack of being able to give DJ a consistently clean pocket anytime he had a drop back. I think that's the problem too. You ran a lot of short passes, but anytime he had to drop back, you had to avoid pressure. And I think that's concerning because Georgia Tech's defensive line was not good. You know, we talked
Yep.
about last year, they didn't hardly generate any sacks and they only brought back 5 of those. And
Yeah.
you know, they only got you one time. But I mean, you couldn't get run push on them either. And they were 131st in rush defense last year. I know it's a new coordinator. I know there's some new faces over there, but man, that is the troubling part. Now, again, to take the good with the bad, I think you did see some. I do like these running backs. I
Yeah.
am excited about. I think Toa Philly had a couple of nice runs. I think he kind of went quiet later in the game. Hopefully, there was no injury bug or anything there.
Yeah.
Roydell Williams, I thought, had a pretty daggone good game. You know, I think he looks pretty good as well. And I mean, they used him. I think Jalen Lucas is a weapon. I will say that. I think that
Yep.
they, you know, they used Jalen Lucas effectively. I like the way that they used him. But there are, and then of course you have Fitzgerald and stuff like that. But man, I just think when you saw DJ throw the ball, there was something there. You know what I mean? A
Yeah.
little bit. There was a little something there. So I think there are some things that can get better. But man, if that offensive line and that defensive line don't get better fast, then I think it's going to limit everything else that you're going to be able to do. But you're going to have to start seeing some scheming. I think you're going to have to start seeing them stretch the field a little bit more. Again, I think that was the biggest takeaway from the game is the fact that we did not stretch the field. Well, the guy we brought in literally to stretch the daggone field.
Right.
And so you
Yep.
allowed Georgia Tech to do exactly what we said you should have done.
That's
This
right.
is exactly what we said with Florida State. You should have basically you know, loaded that box and made them prove that they could beat you with his
Right.
arm, and they refused to do it. And Georgia Tech did, and then we didn't, and so that's confusing. And you know, someone even said that Norvell stopped using Lucas. Why? And that's again, man, I can't answer for that. But it was confusing. You know what I mean? It definitely was. And I do think again, I think after this game, I think they will have the opportunity to go back and realize some of the things that they can do well and some of the things that they can't, and they can adjust their scheme accordingly. They can realize guys, you know, the guys who are ready to step up in the moment and the guys who aren't. And I
Yeah.
think you did see a couple of guys that are ready to step up, but I think there's going to have to be I think it's going to be an open competition on some places at the depth chart because, you know, again, at wide receiver, you have Malik Benson was somewhat effective. Your running backs were the best wide receivers that you had. You know, maybe you have to look at putting Jalen Lucas in the slot more often or something like that just to change something up.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest concern was just the inability to run the ball. And on top of that, I will say the one criticism that I do have with DJU, you know, again, like I said, I think when he threw the ball, he was relatively effective. Again,
Yeah.
70% completion percentage
Yeah.
wasn't terrible for DJU. I thought he was very ineffective in the run game. That
Yeah.
shocked me. I think a lot from his perspective is I thought you'd see more of DJU being able to run the ball and being a little bit more effective with the run. And
Yeah.
it just, man, it didn't look anything like what I expected it to. I think he was not as I don't want to call him slow, but he's not
Yeah.
he's not Jordan Travis. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
It's
And
just
I think
different.
that's what we're used to. But I think also when you know down there on when they had like a goal line or a situation or whatever, I forget exactly what it was, but I was like, man, it was like 3rd and short. I was like, run the quarterback power. This is it. And then he gets tackled for a 3-yard loss.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of that had to do with the offensive line and the blocking. But man, I just think I was a little disheartened by that. I don't know how effective he's going to be in the run game. But if he's not going to be, then you need to let him throw the ball.
Right.
And that's something that they did not do.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I definitely think that I think
Well,
the lack of being able to run the ball and
yeah.
giving up over 200 rushing yards when you look at when you take away the negative plays, man, that is an absolute red flag for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And KH here said something about Norvell should consider getting away from the counter some and just run the ball straight ahead. Georgia Tech kept shooting the gap when FSU ran counter. Yeah, that's true. If Georgia Tech did kept shooting the gap, especially when they ran counter. But also, KH, if you go back and watch the film or watch the game, they were running counter into a blitz, no matter which direction they were coming. I think what Santucci's keys for where the game was, if as soon as they saw that guard pull, it didn't matter if it was just the guard pulling, if it was a guard tackle pulling, if it was a guard tight end pulling on that counter, they were sending everybody. That was the key. They were determined to make sure Florida State could not run the ball. So they were shooting those safeties and those linebackers right into those gaps. my estimation is if Mike Norvell had called more play action, because you saw when he actually called play action on that, they actually were able to complete some passes. They were actually able to move the ball. I thought that that's where the adjustment should have been, that instead of just running counter and then actually sending the running back on counter, run the play action fake off of counter, have those safeties and the linebackers come up, and then hit them for the 10 to 15 yard. I mean, there was one of them where he did that, and Jalen Lucas is running an end route wide the freak open, and DJ misses him. But they only ran that one time. Another time, they ran a screen off of a counter look, and they got 15, 20 yards, I think it was. And then Mike went away from it, which is, again, I just don't understand. Like, why did he go away from that? He saw it was working. Was it a stubbornness because he thought that they should be able to run the ball? I don't know. But all I know is that Georgia Tech was determined to make sure Florida State wasn't going to get more than 2 to 3 yards on the rushing, whether it was counter, whether it was zone scheme, wherever it was. They were triggering on every perceived run play. And then if they found themselves in the pass, our wide receivers just didn't get separation. So,
yeah, and I think that was a big part of it. Like I said, man, I think it was a little bit frustrating with those wide receivers. We thought we were going to have a problem, but yeah, man, I mean, we were very ineffective between the tackles. And I think that is concerning for me. It was almost like, because really when you look at what the backs did, a lot of that was receiving work. That was or quick passes out of the backfield. It wasn't necessarily just handing the ball off and running up the tackles. And that's the problem, is we were very ineffective running the ball between them. But at the same time, like you said, Georgia Tech had a great game plan, and it's really questionable why we didn't adjust to that. Why we couldn't find ways with the screens, with the tight end screen that we had with Kyle Morlock. I thought that was a good play call too. And then it was just like it went away. And, we've seen some comments too about the tight ends, and one comes in right now, they should have used the tight ends more in the passing game.
I agree, Rocky.
I totally agree. I mean, you look at Kyle Morlock. Now, this is the frustrating part too. Kyle Morlock only had a 33% catch rate. I don't know that everyone was on target. I'll have to go back and watch that later. But one catch for 12 yards. No other tight end recorded a stat. Your running backs, Ja'Kai Douglas led you in receiving yards. Malik Benson was second. Roydell Williams was third. Toa Philly was fourth. And then Jalen Brown comes in with 11 receiving yards. Portier had one catch for 15 yards. Morlock 1 for 12. I mean, there's nothing from Darian Williamson. Nope. There's nothing from Deuce Spann, nothing there. Nope. So it's just, I think the receivers, man, they're just, dude, that's tough, man. That's tough when you just don't have the guys to help your quarterback out. They just, again, that's why I don't all put it on DJ, because you had guys that just were not getting open. They weren't creating separation. And then, again, man, the play calling was very questionable for how they adjusted. And again, like we said, man, it's the play calling, I think early on it was okay, because I understand what they were trying to do, but then you didn't adjust. And, I thought in the second half, I was like, okay, well, you'll see those adjustments that we saw with Adam Fuller last year. And it was like you didn't see that.
Never happened.
Right. It just never happened. And so you're going to have to, you're going to have to get better. And it's funny to read some of these comments because people are just all over the place. It's funny.
Amit Tagger, he said, GT look better. Look at these tards thinking they know more than Mike Norvell. Go Jackets. We were just better team at the end. You know what? I'm going to give it to you, Tagger. Georgia Tech played a better game than Florida State did today. We can admit that. We're big boys. We don't mess around here. We call it as we see it. Georgia Tech played a better game. They played their game. They slowed it down. The defense was attacking the whole game. The offense got where they needed when they wanted to. They scored 24 points and they won. Congratulations.
Right. You have to give it to them. I mean, the thing is, like, they outcoached and they outplayed Florida State today, and you have to hand it to them. We've said all offseason that I think Georgia Tech is a better team than people give them credit for. And they showed that on the field today. They earned that win, and they get all the credit for it in the world. Probably going to still have a better record than they do by the end of the season. So it is what it is, and you won on a walk-off field goal by 3 points. So let's simmer down with them being a whole lot better with that aspect too. But no, man, I agree. It was a tough loss. I mean, you look at, like, again, this one here with the comment from Amelia Island Knoll, it's tough, man. There's nothing else you can do but just kind of own it, wear that one, you know what I mean? Wear it a little bit, and then move forward, because you again, like you said, you have to. The games are still going to get played. These
That's
guys
right.
are still going to have to show up against Boston College in every other game, and so you're going to have to make. You're going to have to make some adjustments. And you're going to have to come out and play, and I think the overreaction is going to be like wildfire this week. I
For
think that's
sure.
very true.
For
I
sure.
mean, you can't. I can blame the coaching staff for this, but I can't also sit here and say that this coaching staff isn't 23-4 over the last 2 years.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and if you go 11-1 this year and win out the rest of the season, then everyone's going to forget about this. No
That's
one's going
right.
to care. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's what I think is so funny about it, because this staff still went, they still did 23-4 the last 2 years. So they know what they're doing. It's not like it's a bad staff. I think it is worth mentioning that Alex Atkins wasn't there. He is your offensive coordinator. You
That's
know,
right.
I don't know how much that plays into it. They had a long time to game plan for that, to
Right.
get around it. I just think, at the same time, man, to be perfectly honest, I think this is a culmination of a couple of things, right? I think this is one, the media that has access to this team. I think they oversold us on expectations. And that's just being real. You know what I mean? I don't think that they were completely wrong. I'm not going to say that, right? I'm not going to say that they were lying, but I think that they definitely oversold us on this team, right? And I
Yeah.
think that too, there is something to all them pieces that you lost. There is something to that game one with the continuity where Georgia Tech was bringing back 83% of their offense. There was something to Mike Norvell got out coached today, and you hope that he learns from this. Everybody says that he can't win without Jordan Travis. Well, what do you think he did at Memphis?
Exactly.
He's had good offenses in the past without Jordan Travis. I don't necessarily think it's that or not. Now we look like we were playing with a Big Ten offense today. You know, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Whether that was a pass play or not. So maybe we were just auditioning for the Big Ten. But I think this is a very valid reason to be concerned about the outlook of your season. Right? I don't doubt that at all. But it doesn't mean that it's over. Again, it
Right.
just does not mean that. You even look at the way that they went and lost 3 games in 2022. And then they rebounded and won out the rest of the season. And I think that, again, the expectations were set really high. We came into the season top 10. This is why preseason expectations and rankings don't really mean anything. I think that it does reset the focus on what your season can and can't be, but that doesn't mean they can't win some games. Do I think this season is going to come out here, or this team is going to come out here and go 0-12? No, not even
No.
remotely so. I still think they're going to win 8 or 9 games or whatever. Someone said, Gator fan says the season is over. Buddy, you better buckle up because you got something coming, right?
The Gators, listen, Gators fans, you can talk right now, okay? Because we lost. I get it.
Live it up. Enjoy
But by
it.
the end of the season, let's have a conversation again, okay? Because you got the toughest schedule in the country. You might be lucky to win 4 games. I'll let you talk now, but let's just talk at the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And Miami's still in preseason mode. They have yet to play football yet, so we'll see. They got a couple of cupcakes early on, besides Florida, and after that. But that I do think is funny because, like I said, man, again, going back to where we look at this game where you were the only thing on TV. You were in the international spotlight. Everyone was going to be focused on you, and you knew after the way things happened last year, the way things played out, you knew if something happened, you were going to wear it. You know what I mean? You knew they were going to come for you. But again, there's going to be upsets in college football. Wait until the season continues to get played. Wait until Miami forgets to take a knee again. Wait until Florida goes on a 6-game losing streak. Again, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be fine. We're still going to play football. We're still going to watch this team. We're still going to enjoy it. And there's still going to be some times we're going to get to laugh at the rivals. They're just having their turn to laugh at us right now. But you still got to play us too, and we'll see how that goes. If we end up beating both of them, then they're not going to be able to say much of nothing.
Yeah, no, Jesse, I thought somebody pointed out earlier. I want to go back to that comment because I thought it was a really good comment. They talked about how RQ305 said that FSU slowed it down too. DJU runs like he has one leg. No leg jokes there. But I actually agreed. I thought that 2-minute drill where Florida State had the ball with 2 minutes to go. Yes, even though they were able to get the 59-yard field goal by Fitz, I was very disappointed. I was screaming at the TV, like, what are we doing here? Why are we going slow? And I think I saw on Twitter, somebody said this, and I actually agree with this. They said that I think in that 2-minute drill, you have to come off the headset. You got to
Yeah.
start doing your little thingy,
Yeah.
because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this offense going. It has lost
Yeah.
its rhythm since the first drive. And so you're trying to get this offense going, and you're trying to make the call on the headset and all like that stuff. This isn't the NFL. This is a first year these college players are wearing this headset. And I heard
I will say that you saw Haynes King have some issues with it, where he
exactly
had to plug in his ears. You
he
should
can
have
hear.
you should have had a backup plan in place.
Exactly. And Jesse Palmer even talked about how when he transitioned on the broadcast, he talked about when he's a Gator, whatever, but he talked about how when he transitioned from college to pro, how that it took a while for him to get used to having somebody in your headset. And so you're trying to slow down the game because you're just trying to make sure you get the right play call. And then you're walking up to the line very slow. Like, it was very lethargic. I'm thinking, what is going on? Well, this is a 2-minute drill. Like, we should be hurrying it up. And I was very disappointed in that. And that's both on Mike Norvell and on DJU. I think that Mike Norvell has to have a better system to call those plays at the end. Yes, it did get us a field goal attempt. Yes, Fitz magic, had some magic there, and that was awesome. But man, I mean, we could have gone down and scored a touchdown. That probably changes the game if we're able to do that. I know the offense was out of sync, but that was just very disappointing. And I thought our RQ 305 brought up a great point. Like, we slowed it down. Georgia Tech whole plan was to slow the game down. I mean, we had 7 total possessions each, 7, and both teams scored on 4 of 7 possessions. It just so happens that we had 2 field goals. They had touchdowns. And so that's what really doomed us in as far as the scoring take place. But man, you have to take advantage of that situation. If you're Mike Norvell, you got the ball going down. You're down already in the game. You're down 14 to 11. Man, you got to try to go there and score the game. I mean, in NCAA College 25, Jesse, bro, at 2 minutes, I'm running, I think it's called turbo. I'm running turbo. I got the 4 plays already in my head that I know I want to run, that I'm going to make sure that are the best plays I've ran in that game. Like, come on now. We got to do better than that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I thought that the entire team lacked a sense of urgency. I felt like the entire game. And, I think there is one thing that's worth pointing out too, that I think that this team is struggling with to find an identity right now, is there's not a lot of leadership like we've seen in the past. There's not like that Jared Verse, who's very vocal, Trey Benson, who's very vocal. You think back to the linebacker from the 2013 team. Help me out here.
Tevin Smith.
Telvin Smith. Yeah, you think back to guys like that were jacking their jaw, that were in everybody's face, that were always up and stuff like that.
Jalen Ramsey, yeah.
Right. Those type of guys. We just didn't, DJU's a lead by example guy. He's a quiet guy. A lot of the other guys are that same way. Like, we didn't have, it seemed like, guys stepping up to lead this team, to push everybody, to get everybody ready to go. And I think that was a problem too. But again, man, I think we looked flat. And I think we did not look ready for this game. And, I think you're just going to have to, again, like you say, we're going to have to get back to the board and fix it. But I think this team can be better than what we saw today. I just think, again, like we said, man, they didn't look ready. They didn't have a whole lot of leadership, people stepping up in the moment. And you hope that this is a gut check for this team. That's what you hope. I mean, you hope that they realize, like, maybe I can't roll the helmet out there and think that I'm good. Maybe I do need to stop focusing on NIL deals and things like that, and start playing some, football and stuff like that. That I mean, I hate to be like that. I hate to say that, but I mean, sometimes you just get distracted, and I think you forget about that. This ain't last year's team. You can't rely on somebody else to go out and make the plays. It has to be you.
Correct.
But again, I will say that I think there's a lot when you look at some of these other stats that I pulled up, like Jalen Lucas, man, 6.5 yards per rush, highest on the team by double, or almost. He had a couple of the guys at 4, but 6.5 yards per carry, only got 2 carries.
Yeah.
Only 2 carries. Why? That's the only thing. It's like, why did that happen? Roy Dale got 12, Toafili got 8. Jalen Lucas was your most effective back, and got 2 carries, so it's like, there's just a lot of things that you have to figure out. You have to get better. You have to learn who you can rely on. But I think there's a lot of this, with these teams, I think they have to figure things out. Now, I will say, where somebody says that Boston College is much better in the trenches than Georgia Tech.
Oh man.
On offense, I would say no. I think this offensive line for Georgia Tech is one of the best offensive lines in the conference. They showed that last year, and they returned 4 or 5 starters. So I think they're pretty good there. Probably better on defense, which does make you concerned because you could not run the ball against this
Correct.
team. And they have pretty good linebackers over there too at Boston College. My biggest concern for that game next week is going to be, or whenever it happens that Monday, is going to be containing Thomas Castellanos.
Yeah.
That's what's going to concern me because, I mean, you didn't give up a ton to Haynes King, but let's see, you still gave up. I mean,
55.
yeah, I mean, he had 75 yards, 11. Oh no, that's Haynes, the other Haynes.
Yeah.
He had 54 yards, 15
54.
carries, 54 yards. And so again, man, and again, you couldn't get any pressure back there.
Yeah.
You were lost contained multiple times. And so again, man, that's the things that concern me. But I think you just this team needs to rally right now. Early in the season. Again, it was early in the season. You can still turn things around, but you're going to have to fix some things because the teams on the schedule are getting better.
That's
And
right.
again, I think you feel good that you didn't get, like, I know this is going to sound, gosh, this sounds terrible to say, but like you didn't get smoked.
Blow it out. Yeah.
Right. You didn't lose like 31-17 or something like that, but you did lose to a team that you shouldn't have lost to. We talked about it. We talked about it yesterday in the game day show where you were 13th in the country in talent rankings, and Georgia Tech was 46. You should have won this game alone based on you had the talent edge, but you did not utilize that talent. And we said, right, like, what was it over the last couple of years? We said, I think he was Mike Norvell was like 11-2 or 11-2 against teams that were less talented than him. Well, you have to add another one, and I think again a lot of that was on coaching. But I think you should still be able to beat BC.
That's right.
Don't sleep on that game. Don't sleep on Memphis. Someone actually made a funny comment the other day in our win-loss prediction where they were like, "You guys say don't sleep on every game. This is why. This is
why we say it."
Right. The team slept through this game. We didn't, but the team slept through this game. And so I think there are still a lot of winnable games on the schedule if you can just fix a couple of things.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to a comment that Michael West made on Facebook. He said DJU was off target most of the game. They ran the ball so easy. So one of them is fact. One of them is not, Michael. Not fact. DJU actually, yes, he was off target, but not most of the game. I mean, the man was 19 of 27 for 190 something yards, 198, I believe. He's 70%. He was 70%. That any coach, anybody in college football would take a 70% day. There was a couple of throws that he missed. Yes, for sure. There were a couple wide receivers that were open that he didn't see and he threw somewhere else, but completed a pass. I mean, I think he started the game, I believe, like 10 for 10 or 11 for or 10 for 11, something like that. Now, yes, those throws were 5 yards or less, but I mean, he was very effective early on. And then it was really, again, going back to the play calling, it was a lot of running, and then he would try to throw. They'd call a throw somewhere, and it just he got off rhythm in some ways, and then he got back on rhythm when he went to when he helped them tie up the game there. So no, it's not a fact that DJ was so off target all game. He was off target a few times. Haynes King was 11 of 16. He was off target several times. And the plays he threw, the majority, and I would wager about 8 to 10 of those plays that Haynes King threw the ball were either close to the line of scrimmage or maybe 5 yards above. There was only 2 passes that he threw down the field that were even remotely anywhere near the wide receiver. So let's correct that. Second of all, yes, Georgia Tech ran the ball through Florida State like they were hot butter with a butter knife. I mean, it was ridiculous. Now, again, in the second half, Florida State made some adjustments and was able to send Georgia Tech on a couple 3-and-outs. Yes, for sure. But maybe that's play calling as well, too. But for the most part, when Georgia Tech wanted to run the ball, they were able to run the ball very easily. They dominated defensive line. Adam Fuller didn't start blitzing until towards the end there. And on one of the blitzes, dadgummit, again, this is just my frustration with this, is that you bring a corner blitz, which is good, finally, thank you, believe it. But Georgia Tech sends Jamal Haynes out on a hot route, right, to the strong side, open side of the field. And The person that's supposed to cover him is actually playing on the weak side of the field, DJ Lundy. So now he's got to sprint 50 yards across the field to cover him. Why are we doing that? Why not adjust DJ Lundy as soon as you know you're going to bring that corner blitz so that you have that hot route covered?
Right.
That you tackle him short, game over, because you get the ball, you go score to win. Instead, they continue to drive and they are able to kick a game-winning field goal. Again, where was the adjustment? I mean, we said in the preseason that, Adam Fuller was the king of adjustments. Didn't see much of any.
Yeah, and I will go back and touch on DJ real quick. He started out in the first half 12 of 14. And maybe the most interesting stat of the entire game, maybe the entire season, he was at .-0.1 air yards per attempt. So we were throwing it behind the line a lot. That's crazy.
A lot.
And I just, man, again, like I said, I just don't understand a lot of the scheme in this because you brought in a deep ball thrower. You said you brought him in because he was one of the best deep ball throwers in the country. And then you didn't throw the deep ball. Now, again, I think a lot of that has to do with receivers that couldn't get separation. I thought, like I said, I thought Malik Benson and Jaylen Brown would be able to just outrun their DBs. And, even like we talked about with the one where DJ, you threw it deep and he threw it out of bounds to Malik Benson. It looked like Malik Benson stopped on the route a little bit, but maybe that's because he realized the trajectory was going to be out of bounds. But one, it wasn't a great throw. And two, there was no separation there. They were step for step. Like he got behind him and then they closed in on him. So it's like there just wasn't a whole lot there for DJ. Now, he did make some bad reads. He did miss some things like we talked about with the Jaylen Brown play across the middle or Ja'Kai. He made some bad reads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's part of it. But I thought, to me, I thought the game was close. So I didn't think they were going to do it because Mike isn't going to necessarily take I don't think it was going to take unnecessary risk, but I wouldn't have minded seeing Brock get a drive, at least one, just to kind of see what you could have done there, because we at least know that Brock is a little bit more athletic on the ground than DJ. So maybe you could have incorporated some things with his legs because he's faster than he is. Brock is certainly not scared to throw the ball deep. We know that. We saw that, even in the Orange Bowl where, he was chunking that thing. So we'll see, but yeah, man, it is funny. And I will say, like, to the ones in the comments, because I see some of these things coming through, and it's just hilarious. I think you should, first off, if you're going to come in our comment section to be negative, you at least have to state your team first.
Exactly.
You at least have to state your team first, because unless you are a Georgia Tech fan, don't really need to hear much from you. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, Penn State's the best. Someone comes in here, you suck, losers. Like Penn State?
Penn State. Win a game against a ranked team and then come talk to us.
Exactly. Like, I don't want to say anything that's going to get me in trouble, but I was going to say, you're the best at something, but I'm not going to do that. But no, I do think it's, man, I do think it's funny because it's like, if you're going to talk smack in the comments, at least put your team in the comments there so we know who you're coming from. Because again, man, like a lot of these teams still have to play ball, and there's a lot of teams that are going to take some losses, and Florida State will be Florida State will be able to have a chance to bounce back on their season as well. And just like other people have a chance to blow their season, it's only one game, you can still make it with that 12-team playoff. There is the automatic qualifier bids. I'm not saying we're going to make the playoffs because I don't think that's the case, but again, man, I just think like when you look back to this game and yes, I'm going to put a comment up here when it says Norvell needs a quarterback that he can trust. I think that was the biggest question mark for me, man. I think that really was. I don't understand why they did not let DJU throw the ball more. I just don't understand it. At least stretch the field. That's what you brought him in for. You can't be scared to throw the ball with a guy that you brought in to throw the ball. You just can't. And if you were scared to let him throw the ball, then you need to put in Brock Glenn and let him throw it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, but again, man, I think you need to get Hakeem Williams back at receiver just to maybe give you a change of pace, maybe to try something, because we've seen him make some plays in the past against ACC defenses and things like that. We knew receiver was going to be a struggle this year. We knew that was going to be the one position that we had been kind of saying the whole time. We've always joked where like Mike Norvell says that this was the group that he was the most excited about or whatever in the offseason. I was like, well, you might be by yourself being excited about that group.
Yeah.
He's probably there now for sure.
That's right.
But yeah, man, I still put a lot of this onus on the play calling and the game planning, and that stuff is what bothers me the most, because this is a year where I thought you would see Mike Norvell really kind of get in his bag as a play
Yeah.
caller.
Yeah.
That I would have thought. But again, like we said, man, there are still some things that you can build on. I think that you can get better, but man, you're gonna have to do it quick because this is
Yeah.
a bad performance, man. I
That's
mean,
right.
that's really all I can say is that, like, I think there are some things that you can build on going forward because you're gonna have to keep playing these games. But there was a lot of bad. I think you saw uninspired football. They played flat. You didn't see anybody really making like, people weren't even really like celebrating and things like that. You know what I mean? Big plays and stuff. It was just,
Yeah.
man, it just didn't feel like there was any energy there. Even Norvell himself kind of looked a little, maybe a little uptight on the sideline or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, man, just a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? A lot of stuff that did not make sense. That wasn't typical Florida State. We sure appreciate that. We actually, it's funny because we talked about this before the season, and we were like, man, because Michael joined me last year around Virginia Tech,
Yep.
and we were like, we have not done a loss yet other than the Orange Bowl, and that was there was extenuating circumstances of that, so we predicted that to be a blowout before it even happened. But I'd done the 3 losses back in 2022, and these are never fun because
No.
everybody's going to come in here and everybody thinks we should fire Mike Norvell, and everybody thinks we should just end the program season right now, and while you're remodeling the stadium, just knock it down and bury the ashes and let's just go home for the season. Like, come on, man, this
Yeah.
is one game. You saw how many people overreacted to the first half of the first game. It is concerning. There are some things that are concerning, but the season's not over, man. You can still see, like we said, there. I saw some good, encouraging things from the running backs today. The secondary really didn't do terrible. I mean, I know they didn't have a lot of work to do because they ran the ball a lot, but man, I don't know, man. It's going to be. There are some things that have to be addressed. It's just the season's not over. This team has a lot of football left to play. They can certainly get better. We got a Penn State fan going off in the comments here.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, man. I
I
don't
love
know.
it. Tater King, he says he's a Clemson fan, and this isn't smack talk, it's just being real. We tried to
Oh, and
warn y'all about DJ, but FSU didn't want to listen.
we are, and that's the thing. Like, we're being real, man. I don't think that we're pumping smoke. I just think that
Yeah.
it's ridiculous to say that your season is over after one game. Again, like we said, man, who would have thought after Ohio State came out and lost to Virginia Tech that they would have went on to win the national championship with their third string quarterback? Don't tell me what is and is not possible. You don't know that. You don't know what this team can do. And I think we will be real. Like, it was not a good performance. There was a lot of things that we were disappointed in. I don't put the onus on DJ. Like, I think a lot of people are going to say that again, DJ, you didn't play well in this game. Well, I think he didn't have the help at receiver. He didn't have the help in the game planning that we had kind of hoped that he would have had. Maybe it would have been. I just don't know, man. DJU was not my concern in this game. Was he great? Was he stellar?
Right.
No, I don't think so. But I don't think he was bad. I have a lot of other concerns that weren't him.
Yeah. No, I don't think DJU was the overall problem of the game. I think there were moments where, yes, he could have been a little bit better. There were moments where he could have, probably read the play a little bit better, for sure. But this isn't on DJ. This is not on DJ. If you're going to place the blame anywhere, and Mike Norvell will say this, and I'm sure, if you go watch whatever media outlet has aired the post game press conference, he will say it's on him. He has to, because the play calling is on him. And then,
I think where he did take a lot of the onus on it.
Yeah. And then, okay, see, that's why we love that coach. And then you have to put it on the offensive line and the defensive line and Adam Fuller. I think those are the 4 entities that you have to blame the totality of this game on. Mike Norvell didn't call a great game. He got out schemed on offense. Adam Fuller didn't call a great game on defense. He got out schemed on defense. The offensive line did not play up to what they were projected to play. The defensive line did not play up to what it projected to play. I think the bright spot you can look at, Jesse, is the defensive back. They only gave up 143 yards of total passing game, and most of those passes came from 5 yards or in. And so they didn't give up any deep passes. They weren't out of the play. I think they had one busted coverage, but the busted coverage was on the linebacker, not on the DB. And so I think you're pleased about the DBs. You're going to trust that passing offense. But if you can't stop the run, it doesn't matter, because you're going to have to be sending corners down to try to stop the run, safeties down, and you're gonna leave your corners on an island, and at some point somebody's gonna get burned. And so I think the biggest thing they need to go back to do when they get back to the States is they got to get into the lab and figure out what's up with that defensive line, what's up with those linebackers, where are the adjustments we need to make. They tried to play a lot of players. I saw Omar Graham, I saw DJ Lundy, I saw Blake Nicholson, I saw Cam Riley. They got to figure out, okay, what is this rotation going to be? Who needs to be in the game? I have to go back and watch the film. I don't know if they brought in the second the second tier defensive lineman. I saw Sione. I saw Lions. I saw them get in. I heard Lions get called for a tremendous play he made there. But at some point, it just wasn't working. And so you just got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what you need to do in order to correct this run defense. As far as the offense, listen, it was touted that Florida State had 12 players that can go into and play and start, and it'd be great. And this offense line's better. Now, you need to figure out who your best daggum five are, and you need to run with them. Don't be, and I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'm not trying to be negative. Robert Scott
ain't
it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He is not the same player he was his first 2 years here. He's just not. He was getting murdered at the right tackle, just murdered. And so I think you have to go back and look at that. I think you need to look at Keontae Jones. He did not play well at right guard there. I thought there were some questions there. I actually thought Richie Leonard held up moderately well. Obviously, Darius Williams at Washington at left tackle played well as well too. I just think you guys got to get back in the lab and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I agree with that, man. And I hate dumping on players a lot of times, but I have said for a relatively a long time, man, I have never been that impressed with Robert Scott. I just have not, man. I just, for me, he's just never kind of been that guy at your tackle. But like you said, you say that you have depth. Well, let's see it. Let's see if you need to switch some people up. If someone has to lose their starting job, then so be it. But you can't get handled by this Georgia Tech defensive line. You just can't do it. I think linebacker is a little bit of a concern now too. We knew that was going to be, we knew that there was going to be a concern with coming in the season at linebacker. But we were told that by the people, again, that have access, that this linebacker group actually took a giant step. And so we thought that was going to be the case. And I think, Omar Graham Jr. made a lot of mistakes today. But,
yes, he did.
And we also talked about how they wouldn't rotate the defensive line as much. And I don't think they did today. I think you saw basically about a 2 deep that did most of the rotation.
Yeah.
Something that I said from the day I saw the spring game. Grady Kelly was was he in Tallahassee or was he in Dublin? I really don't know. I mean, he just made no impact on the game. But, I will say again, man, that like I said, some people, apparently I'm delusional in the comments, but, Pat Payton was the ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. He did, he was a all ACC guy last year, I think. He doesn't have, we were worried about this too. We were worried about this, where when he doesn't have Jared Verse opposite of him, that maybe he gets a little bit more of the attention. And I think when that's going to happen, you need a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. to step up. And I don't think he was particularly effective today. Again, that was the guy that we saw come in from Georgia, who was not bad. He played out of position. He was banged up a lot, but he was still a young guy. I just think, man, I think here's the thing. Like, it's crazy for people to really expect like this team just to reload and to go 13-0 every single year. Like, you know how many teams do that? Not many at all. We thought that this team had the potential to lose some games this year. I predicted them to go 10-2. I didn't expect Georgia Tech to be one of my losses.
No, it did not. It's not that one.
I didn't predict that. But I did think that we were going to lose a couple of games this year, and I thought that it could have went a little bit lower. But man, it's just, I think you have to, again, you lose 10 NFL draft picks off of this team. That does make a difference. You lose a quarterback that competed for the Heisman last year, finished 5th in Heisman voting. That type of stuff does make a difference. Yeah. But at the same time, again, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that this team can't get better, because we have guys that we've seen make plays before.
Absolutely.
It's probably not, let's be honest, it's probably not going to be the season that you want it to be. It's probably not going to be a playoff type of season. You can certainly put yourself in contention for the ACC championship, but again, you're going to have to pick yourself up off the mat and fast, because if you were to if you lose next week, then I will certainly hit the panic alarm.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think what you have to do is you have to erase all the playoff ACC talk. You got to get out of that. And this is going to sound like coach speak, but you just got to go back to the lab. You got to go one game at a time. How do we beat Boston College? That's what we got to focus on. What do we learn from this game? How do we beat Boston College? Go out and do that. Then after that, then you go and you do the next game. How do we beat Memphis? I think that's the third game. How do we beat Memphis, right?
Yep.
Then after
One game
that,
season.
one game season. That's all you got to do. And regardless of where you end up at, focus on the one game. And then just this part, and I'll throw it back to you. Amit Tagger said earlier in the comments, he said GT just dominated physically. I think the hard part for FSU fans to understand, we had the better Jimmy and Joes. Objectively, because that's what we're trying to be today. We're not trying to let our emotions get the best of us. Objectively, that is categorically false, Mr. Taggart. Okay. You didn't have the better Jimmy and Joes. Objectively, the composite ranking actually says that Florida State had the better players. You did out-scheme Florida State today. We'll give you credit for that. Georgia Tech and the offensive coordinator, I can't think of his name right now, they definitely out-schemed Adam Fuller. I think Santucci out-schemed Mike Norvell. They had better play calling. They were able to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They were able to they were able to run that clock down, and they were able to put the game in their hands to go decide it. They controlled their destiny most of that game, and Florida State did not, for sure. But I bet if you were to play this game 10 times, Florida State's walking out of there with at least 6 victories. 6.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Maybe even 7. So you didn't have the better Jimmys and Joes. You just had the better scheme, and just on this day, you played Florida State better. So we'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth, man. I mean, they outplayed us today. But again, like, you have to think that this team still has some talent. They can still do some things. Again, and you know, it's funny because everybody's like, "Oh, well, you have you're living on a prayer," or whatever he said. And it's like, man, look, do you think that I did this in my house because I'm going to come on here and shit on FSU every time they lose a game? No, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm a Florida State fan. Guess what? I'm going to be in that stadium on Labor Day night watching them play Boston College. Let's hope I don't jump off the top of it, but you know what I mean? Shit, I sat there and watched us lose to Jacksonville State. Don't tell me about lows. I've been there. I don't need to hear about the lows. I've been through the lows. I've also watched them you know, win a national championship. So I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows. This it's football, man. Things happen. Teams win all the time. Teams get upset all the time. You know what I mean? FCS teams, FBS teams, all these teams get upset all the time. And again, like I said, man, it's funny because there's so many people that are coming in here running their mouth or their fingers, they're running their typing fingers because their team hasn't played yet. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so you just have to wait till games get played, man. Everybody's 0-0 right now besides Florida State. And so whenever your team has to play, you're probably going to be disappointed at some point in the season as well. We just happen to do it first. And so that part is, you know, again, man, it's a little bit frustrating. But again, I think this team is still going to line up and play ball. So I still think they have a chance to turn things around and get better. And of course, I'm always going to be positive because that's just the way that it's supposed to be. I mean, of course, I'm going to be real. You know what I mean? And I'm going to call it like we see it. But you know, I don't think that there's any reason to just come in here and cancel the season and fire Norvell and get rid of DJU because of one game that you lost by 3 points on a walk-off field goal against a team that had a daggone good offense, you know, that we've been talking about all offseason. And so I think there is that aspect too. Like, yeah, we're going to be positive. I'm still going to talk about this team next week. I'm still going to go to the game next week. But, you know, it is what it is. I still think there's a lot of concerns here. And someone says that, you know, oh, I won't tell no lies. I'll keep it real, unlike Jesse. Well, have you not been watching for the last hour and a half? I mean, we got beat up front. We got beat. We got beat in the trenches, which was concerning. That was supposed to be our strength. That was supposed to be the strength. I think the team played flat. I think they played uninspired. I think they got beat physically. I think they got beat schematically. I think they got beat a lot of different ways today.
Yeah.
But I think if you see this team come back and go to the drawing board and work on some things and fix some things, maybe you give the young guys a chance. I know it's early. I know it's still early to start taking unnecessary chances, but you know what? If you got nothing at wide receiver, put Elijah Moore on the field. Put LaWayne McCoy on the field. Whoever wants to make a play deserves to be on the field. So put them on the field and let them make plays. And I think it's time that you're going to have to make some business decisions for some of these older guys that they can't get it done, because we've heard a lot about how these younger guys are probably the more talented on the team. Like, if you can't get these tight ends to get involved in the pass game, let's see what Amari Williams has. Why not? What do you have to lose? And I think you will see some of that going forward. I think you're going to see them have to take more risks because you've put yourself behind the 8 ball with this first loss. But we're not going to come in here and dump on the team. Of course, we're going to be real, and we're disappointed just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's disappointing, man. But
yeah.
I'm not gonna shut the website down because we lost a game. It is what it is, man.
No, I mean, this is a fan site built for fans. So you're getting pure fan at. We're not media. We're not credentialed. We do this for fun. We love to do this because it's a hobby of ours and because we bleed garnet and gold. So you're getting fan reaction here.
Yeah.
Just as us. We hurt just as much as any other fan out there. Now, we don't hurt as much as those players hurt. We don't hurt as much as those coaches hurt because this is their livelihood. This is what they do. You and I, we're going to get up tomorrow. Most of us are going to go to church. Some of us may not. Some of us may still be in Ireland, drinking our sorrows away, but we're going to get up and it's going to be another day, and it's going to hurt. And then we're going to get back on and we're going to be excited for the Boston College game. Those players, they're the ones, those coaches, they're the ones who got to get up tomorrow and think, man, we got to go back to the States. We got to fix all these problems. We got to figure this out because we were supposed to be the better team. Joe Long said earlier in the comments, he said, I saw a team in better physical condition. Georgia Tech's O-line wore down Florida State. Usually the bigger team wears down the smaller team by the fourth quarter, but FSU's O-line, D-line seemed out of shape. Joe Long, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. I mean, Nick Saban himself said yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. Thank you. He said on the Pat McAfee show that Florida State was much bigger and stronger and faster. This is the GOAT of all people saying this himself. So I'm going to take his word for it. Now, he did pick Florida State to beat Georgia Tech, but I think he's basing off what he saw in practice yesterday. Yet they got into the game, and Georgia Tech just had a better. Georgia Tech schemed it up in such a way that it put Florida State's strength at a disadvantage for them. They motioned again more times than I can even remember seeing. And it wasn't just one motion. They had multiple motions in one play. And so Florida State's defense just was not prepared or ready, or they didn't get great enough looks in their fall practices. I don't know where it was, but that defensive line got pushed around. And so is that a strength and conditioning problem? Is that a conditioning problem? Is that a talent problem? Or was just Georgia Tech returning 4 out of 5 of their best offensive linemen, and they led the ACC in rush last year. And so again, of course, that's going to be a problem, and Adam Fuller should have adjusted to it. Absolutely. On the offensive side of the ball, Florida State's offensive line was projected to be the better offensive line. Was it that Georgia Tech's defensive line was better after coming in at 118 last year against the run, that they were just miraculously better? No, I don't think so. I think what the difference was is that Santucci had a better scheme against Mike Norvell's offense. They blitzed a lot. They triggered on every instance of a run play. They brought blitz on passing downs. Mike Norvell didn't have a lot of hot routes for DJU to throw to, or he missed them. I'd have to go back and watch the film. So yeah, I can't disagree with Joe Long on this. It's that Florida State had the better players. Florida State had the more talented team. Georgia Tech had the better scheme today, and that won.
Oh, I totally agree, man. And that's, I think that is the part, again, that leaves us scratching our head more than anything, was that you thought the coaching advantage was going to be there in this game, and it just wasn't. And it almost looks like, it almost looks like they didn't take Georgia Tech seriously in a way. You know what I mean? And I don't want to say that they didn't game plan for them, they didn't prepare for them, but I don't know, man. It didn't look like they were prepared schematically wise, and they didn't adjust to the things that they were doing. I don't know what the limitations with their personnel is. I will say that early on in the game, it did look like our defense was a little more tired than they should have been, and that did concern me a little bit. But it's gut check time, man. I do say that. I do think that you have, but like I said, man, you can get better. But you're going to need, it's going to be everybody. The coaches have to take onus of this. And of course, Mike Norvell is going to say that because that's what coaches do. You know what I mean? That they of course he's going to take the ownership. He's not going to throw his players under the bus. He's never done that.
Right.
but they just got to figure out what went wrong on both sides of the coin. I don't necessarily put it all on the players, but even if you don't scheme it right, when you have a talented roster, you should be able to go win those one-on-one matchups. You should be able to go win those battles. And again, I mean, you shouldn't be in a close game with Georgia Tech. I can't necessarily say that, but I mean, again, like this is the same team that lost to Georgia last year. Brock Bowers' Georgia 31-23. So I mean, they played that team tough. I think Georgia Tech again is a better team than people think with that offense. We talked about how they had all that continuity coming back from last season, and that we were worried about that in game one because they have more. They are on the same page more than you are, and a lot of the defense early on they looked lost. That's what the problem was. And they had some good drives. They had a couple drives where they put some things together. I think you have to expose the bad, and you have to look at the good and what do we do right and what do we do wrong, and then we have to go from there. I don't think that Florida State is going to get physically whipped in the trenches in every game, but it does make you concerned about the Clemson game. It does make you concerned about some of the other teams on your schedule, like a Miami and things like that do have good stuff like that. And I will say it is funny too. I just want to say one thing with some of the comments. Yes, there are some negative comments in here. And it's funny because like it's super weirdo behavior. I will say that. Like I know they're just excited that Florida State lost. Like they won't be able to cheer for their team to win a whole lot, so they get to celebrate when Florida State loses. But hey, guess what? You're driving up our engagement, so appreciate you.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it's college football. Like this is the pageantry of college football, right?
Right.
You get into your opposing team's fan site live, streaming live on YouTube, and you talk trash. Like it's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? And as long as they're being not like just outright just disgusting,
don't be hateful.
rude. Yeah, don't be hateful. Then you know what? It's going to happen, and we'll deal with it. I will say this. I will say that to that point, Grace Point, she or he can't. I don't know who that is, but Grace Point said, and this person's a Gator fan. They said, I still think y'all's D-line can be special. Just figure out how to fix it. What went wrong? Go. And I can't say the Gainesville team. I actually agree with them. I think while this is very concerning. What we saw against Georgia Tech and how they basically got, for the most part, manhandled for almost 200 plus yards, when if you don't take out the sacks and stuff like that. I think it's not impossible to fix. I think Adam Fuller and John Perpuchis and Odell Higgins, they're going to get back in the lab. They're going to figure out where it went wrong. Was it all the motioning? Was it that Georgia Tech just had a better offensive line than what people suspected, even though we thought they would be good? We didn't think they'd be this good. So were we wrong? Were they wrong? What could have been done better? I think Adam Fuller will look back and wish he had blitzed a little bit more, wish that he had leveraged the safeties coming down and the linebackers a little bit more, putting those corners on the island, allowing that pass defense that's supposed to be the strength of the defense to show itself. I think they'll look back on that too. And I think they'll prepare themselves. I think they're not, I'd be shocked. Now, I'm not predicting today that Florida State will beat Boston College. I would have probably yesterday, but I'm not predicting either way. What I am saying is I'd be shocked if there weren't some major adjustments, because Boston College is going to look at this film and they love to run the ball. Bill O'Brien's a huge run-oriented type of play caller there. Boston College always has great offensive linemen. And so they were going to look at this. They're going to try to do the same thing. I'd be shocked if Adam Fuller didn't come up with some different ways of scheming to be able to stop the run, just based on what they saw. If he doesn't, then that's a derelict of duties, and we'll have that conversation then. But so I will say Grace Point. Yeah, I do think it's fixable. It's just to what level is it fixable? Is this what we're looking at going forward, or is there another level that this defensive line didn't play to that they can get to?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, you're bothered by the fact that Norvell got out schemed on the day, right? That is concerning, because you think that you have that advantage at coaching, but in a weird kind of way, that's almost the most encouraging part of it, because like if you lost by scheming, it's not like you just, those are things that can be fixed. That's that's a relatively easy fix too. And like we talked about, you get the long layover for Boston College a little bit there. Then you get an early bye week because you played the week 0 game, so you have an extra week there to prepare for Memphis, and not so much an extra week to prepare for Memphis, but an extra week to look inside and figure yourself out. A lot of times in practice, these guys are hitting each other and they know what's coming and things like that. Sometimes you don't see things get exposed until you play in a game time situation, and that's what we talked about earlier. Was like you at least now you know a little bit more about your strengths and weaknesses. Like you said, you can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this is what we don't do well. This is what we do well. And so we
Right.
need to focus more on this, and to kind of start bringing all of us home, because we're going up on 2 hours here. I think it's like when you look at the positive, right? So when there's a lot of negative, we've talked about that. You got out schemed, you got out played in the trenches and all that stuff. That's concerning. I get that. But when you look at the positive side of things, like we said, man, when DJU did throw the ball, it wasn't terrible. Yes, he missed some reads. Yes, he missed some throws. You find me a quarterback that throws for 100% completion percentage and
Correct.
doesn't miss any reads.
Correct.
And unless you got Jesus playing quarterback, then that's then that's probably not going to be the case. And so I don't think DJU had a bad day, so to speak. I think that he was ineffective in the run game, which I was a little disappointed in. I think the scheme didn't help his case, and I think that the wide receivers didn't help him either. But I think when you did see him, when they let him throw the ball, and Lord knows I screamed at my TV a lot of times to throw the freaking ball. I thought he was okay with that. And again, even if you have, for underperformance reason, if you have to go to Brock Glenn, I think you feel better about that than you did going to Tate Rodemaker last year. Again, I was encouraged by what I saw from Roydell Williams and Jalen Lucas and even Toa Philly. He got quiet late in the game, but I was excited about some of the things I saw there. So, if you look at what you did positively and how you move forward, and I think that's kind of where we can transition to now. We've talked about Georgia Tech a lot. You know what I mean? We've talked about this game. It was bad. It sucks and all that type of stuff. But now you kind of got to figure like, okay, this is what happens. You have to get yourself off the mat now, right? And so you have to be able to rebound from this. And so how does that happen? And I think that, again, I think it comes back to you take what you did well. You saw DJU throw the ball. You got to let him throw the ball. You hope Hakeem Williams is ready for the next game. So hopefully at least you get another option at wide receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be the answer that's going to come in and be effective and all that stuff, but he's another option. He's a former 5-star guy. He's got an NFL body type. If he could play, that could be another guy, because we see wide receivers are a problem. So you like some of the pieces on offense. It's just like, and I'll be interested. And of course I watch on YouTube TV. So I already got the game DVR'd. So, we had to jump on here for our instant reaction, but I'm going to go back and watch the film. And I want to see how that offensive line works, who was good, who was bad, what pieces they can bring in to fix this thing. Because if you can get that offensive line under control a little bit there and you can figure out what's going on, and Lord knows this was supposed to be one of our strengths. So that is a concern. But then you can see a path for the offense to maybe get better here than they did today. And the adjustments are going to be the key to that. First off, you're going to have to stop running the ball into a loaded box. Correct. You're going to have to stop being scared to let your quarterback throw the ball and let him throw the ball. On the defensive side of things, I think that the defensive line got whooped today, and that was not good, right? That's very concerning. You also had a really good offensive line that you were going against. And so I think that if you can get these guys, you can kind of go back to the drawing board and figure things out there. The linebackers were a little bit of a concern for me. I think DJ Lundy is a guy that's been good against the run. He's always been good against the run. The pass is where you're concerned. But I don't think you feel any worse about your secondary after today. I don't think so either. So I think you have some things that you can build off of that were positive. I think special teams were big for you today as well. We saw some things there. So again, man, I don't think this team is going to win 5 or 6 games. I don't think that's what it's going to be. I think you're going to see a gut check type of week for them. I think you're going to see where, they didn't expect to lose this game either, man. This team thought that they were going to be pretty good. And sometimes you just need to be punched in the gut one time to really wake the team up. I think you're going to need to see more leadership. You're going to need to see them play with more fight. At least you get the next game at home inside Doak Campbell Stadium. The next 2 or 3 games you get at home inside Doak Campbell Stadium. So that until I think you got Cal there too, until you go to SMU. So you have a couple games at home. You don't have to travel. You don't have to go all this international, distractions and stuff like that. I think you can see a path for this team to get better. I know, like, again, man, I'm not focusing on what the turds from the other fan bases are in here telling us that Florida State sucks and we should fire Mike Norvell and all that stuff. No, man, Mike Norvell beat both of y'all's teams in here who was talking smack last year. Like, your coach doesn't know how to take a knee. Stop telling me about my coach, bro, for real. Like, Miami has had one of the most talented rosters in the country in the ACC for the past 20 years, and the closest they got to sniffing an ACC championship was getting their face kicked in by 5 touchdowns. Don't tell me about what Florida State can and can't do, because y'all haven't done anything.
Exactly.
And Florida, get ready to wear a 5-win season this year if you're in there too. So, again, man, it will be interesting to see. And I did see that someone asked, speaking of, while we're on that subject, because we can have a little fun in this too, even though it's a rather salty time. Somebody did say that they asked, who are we taking in the Florida and Miami game that's coming up? Because again, man, got to remember, like other teams are getting ready to play their games too, so they're going to get exposed a little bit too for who's good and who's bad. I know Michael originally took Florida in that one. I know they get the home field advantage. I took Miami in that one. I don't know, man. I think that's going to be a really interesting game because it's kind of a put up or shut up year for Mario Cristobal, and it's a little bit more of a hang on and survive year for Billy Napier. I think he needs every win he can get, and I think if Miami doesn't put up a 10-win season, then you're going to be a little bit concerned with what the future at Miami looks like. But I'm going to take Miami in that one. But I'm really kind of hoping that like maybe a meteor falls on the stadium or something like that. Of course, I hope nobody gets hurt. I hope they both have to take an L or something like that. So we'll have to see it. And for the people who say that like Florida State got smoked, man, we lost on a walk-off field goal, bro. Chill. Like we lost to. This is what Georgia Tech does, man. It ain't the first time they've walked us off. Things happen. But yeah, man, I can see I think at the end of the day, it's like, yes, you came into this game with red flags of, will the receivers step up? Can they step up? Will the linebackers take that step like we've heard about? And, people can talk about us all they want. If you want to get mad at somebody, go get mad at the beat writers for FSU that told us that this was going to be an elite team in the line of scrimmages. But yeah, man, I think when you talk about this team, yes, there are some red flags that you came into this game with, and I would say that you have way more red flags coming out of this game than you did before. But I can also see a path to where this team can get better and win some games.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Joe Long said, you move on to game 2, you look at the game, Phil, what is correctable? But maybe it was a travel. Listen, Georgia Tech had to travel too. They had the same conditions, so you can't blame it on travel. It's just not fair. Not fair to those players on Georgia Tech's side that played really well and executed their game plan, their scheme, and came out with the win. Florida State didn't get blown out. Florida State lost on a walk-off field goal. Florida State was in the game the entire game. Georgia Tech was in the game the entire time. I mean, if Florida State, who knows? If Florida State gets another possession, if there's another possession, maybe Florida State goes down and ties the game up. Maybe they go with a win. Maybe they don't. We won't know because the time ran out. Georgia Tech did what it needed to do. I think what's correctable is you have to look at that defensive line. You got to figure out, is this the line we're going to roll with for the rest of the season? Can they be dominant? Can they get a rush? Can they get a pass rush? If they can't get a pass rush, then we need to change our scheme defensively. We've got to blitz more. We've got to leverage those corners and safeties a little bit more in the running game, which I know Adam Fuller doesn't like to do. And we're going to have to come out of man as much as we play. I mean, we play man almost 90% of the time. We're going to have to come out of man, and we're going to have to try something different if this front four can't get the kind of pressure it needs to get. I think on the offensive line, I think you need to settle on your best 5. You got to find your best 5. And right now, I'm not saying that any of those players suck by any means. They're all incredibly talented players. But right now, the best 5 did not play today. And so figure out who that best 5 is and roll with them. I think Mike Norvell needs to give a little bit more to DJU in the passing game. I think he needs to look at not just the 5 yards and cloud of dust kind of throwing, like give him some deep shots. If you're going to run the ball and they're triggering on that run, hit them on the top. The only way you're going to loosen up somebody from blitzing from you is to hit them over the top. And see if you can connect on a couple downfield throws, more than 5 yards. Give them some 10, 15-yard throws down the field. DJU's going to have to continue to try to get better. There was several times in the game that I saw that his footwork was off. We talked about this in the offseason. When his footwork is off, that's when you see his inaccuracies. So you have to do that. I think a positive of this game is that I thought the running backs played really well when they got a chance. I do think I do think David Johnson and Mike Norvell need to limit how many. I know you're trying to play everybody, trying to keep everybody happy, but you only got one ball. Okay. And
Yeah.
so you need to limit. So you let those running backs. I saw this on Twitter during this past week where people were fearful that they would be rotating the running back so much that none of them would be able to get into a rhythm. And so I do think you need to kind of condense that room. And maybe you were using this game to do that. I think if Hakeem Williams is able to return to Boston College, it's yet to be seen. But if he's able, that gives you another options. I think Dugans is going to have to really light a fire under these wide receivers. You got to be better than this. You have to be better. You got to create some separation. That is also based on the scheme, on the play calling. Mike's got to scheme them up open. I mean, I saw earlier. I mean, we didn't run. I didn't see a lot of crossers, which when Georgia Tech was in man coverage is a man coverage beater, right? I didn't see a lot of slant routes until we were in desperate mode and we were driving down the field to score the tying touchdown. Again, the screen game, the bubble game. I mean, those are ways that you can get DJU in a rhythm, but also get the ball moving, right? Because the teams you're going to play coming up, they don't have the same speed. Okay, Boston College and Memphis, they don't have the same speed that you have going down. So you need to get the ball out east and west as quick as you can to those speedsters. Malik Benson, Jalen Brown, Ja'Kai Douglas, Jalen Lucas, Kentron Portier, those guys, Deuce Spann, Darian Williamson, those guys got blazing speed. Let's leverage our speed here. Let's do some stuff to get that back. So I think those are correctable. And I think if you can do that, then that's going to set you up to focus on Boston College. If you can shore up the run game and put their defense in a blender, then you have the chance to go in to win. And I'll say this lastly about the Miami-Florida game. I don't want it to be a meteor because I don't know how you avoid not dying when a meteor comes. But I will say that I wish there was some way that like the NCAA would just come in and be like, you know what, you both suck, you both lose, right? Just give them an L. I will say that for especially now, I am even more adamant now. This is not about I can't pick who I think will win because I just hate both teams. Right. I will pick who I need to win. I need Florida to win this game because what that'll do is that'll knock Miami down because Florida is not destined to win a lot of games this season. You saw the schedule. You know the schedule. But Miami has an easy schedule. Let's just be real. They have an easy schedule. So I need Florida to beat Miami so that then they have all of this and we can go in their comment section and troll them. And then that way it'll set up a kind of put us all back on an even playing season.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. Again, like I see a lot of the ways that it can get better. I think a lot of it is scheme based. Like you said, you didn't run a lot of man beater routes, which I think they should have. They should have utilized. Like if you can't burn them over top, there's still other ways that you can use that speed. There's still other ways that you can scheme them open. I think you will see more screens going forward. I think you will see a lot of ways to kind of maybe negate what that offensive line is doing. I just stopped reading the comments at this point, man. It's just it's just a dumpster fire in there. You know, everybody's bringing up stuff from last year and stuff that doesn't even matter. So I gave up on the comment section.
You're crazy.
It is what it is, man. This is just a bunch of people on bunch of people with tough Twitter fingers or whatever that their team hasn't played yet. Because again, like Florida State, like we said, man, they were in the they're in the spotlight on week 0, so they were going to get all the attention whether they won or lost, and you knew this was going to happen. And to the person who says the comment section is undefeated, well, your team won't be for long because I know you're a Florida fan. So enjoy the talk now because it's coming. But yeah, man. So I think as we get ready to wrap this one up, as we come up on 2 hours, again, man, I think that you can see the path to get forward, but I think the onus is going to have to come on Mike Norvell and this coaching staff. I think there's enough there that you can build from, but I think you're going to have to take some onus in using your personnel wisely. And I will say too, like, we talked about earlier where we said where we thought maybe he trusted his defense a little too much. I think he maybe had overestimated that offensive line. Yeah. And I will say that I kind of have to wonder if the O-lines, and it shouldn't be this way. It should not be this way. You're all a veteran group. All of you have played a ton of snaps, and most of it's been here at Florida State. Alex Atkins not being here could have played into that offensive line having an underperformance because, man, we know Maurice Smith. We know Darius Washington. We've seen Byers do well. So we've seen a lot of these guys do well. I wonder if that did play into it. Now, the
Yeah.
bad part is he's got a 3-game suspension, so you're going to have to figure something out quick.
Yeah. Quick. Yeah.
But at the same time, man, like I said, you can see some of the pass to get forward. I think if you get Atkins back, if you, like you said too, if you focus in on guys that are your playmakers, and then you're able to use them more. I know they like to rotate heavily, but
Yeah.
I, as much as I was excited to see about it too, see him too. I don't know that I would have had Cam Davis as a true freshman in this type of
Yeah.
situation in a tight game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With a big drop like that, it just kind of seems questionable that you
Yeah.
had him in that early. Like you said, I think you need to settle in on your rotation. I think you have to do that. I think you have to settle in on the people that you need to go to bat for you, and then I think
Yeah.
you just kind of go to war with those guys. And
Yeah.
if you have opportunities to get other guys in, that's pretty much about it. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
I think that I think you see a way for this team to get better. I just think it's going to all start with that scheming, and Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller are going to have to take onus of this, and they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, figure out what they do well, and you're going to have to fix it quick, man, because Boston
Oh
College
yeah.
is coming to town real soon.
And you can't take them for granted. And I just want to say this to
Yeah.
Grace's point. They're saying like, oh, why the Florida hate? Listen, obviously we're big rivals, and so I don't like Florida. You don't like FSU. We get it, right? Today is not about Florida hate, but all I'm saying is that if you just have an objective view of your schedule, all I was saying is that it doesn't look like, based on who you're playing this year, it doesn't look like there's a lot of wins there. I'm not saying that Florida's terrible, that they're trash, that they're all this. I'm not saying any of that, okay? Because we haven't played them yet. When we play them, I'll talk all that trash, all that smoke.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm just saying that when you look at the calendar, when you look at the schedule, there are a lot of teams on there that are in the top 10, first of all, in the top 15, and we're all in bowl games or playoffs last season. So, and Florida did not, if we're just being honest, Florida did not make a bowl game last season, right? And so all I'm just saying is that the schedule is very difficult. It's the number one, it's the toughest schedule in the country this year. And so I'm not trying to harp on them or anything. I appreciate, you giving us a little bit of love here today, but it is what it is. That's the truth. Florida State has a tall task of going back to the States, getting this ship righted, getting focused on Boston College, getting that defensive line, that offensive line figured out in the scheming. Mike Norvell needs to open up the play call. And I think if we can do that, then I give us a great chance against Boston College.
Yeah, and I mean, the last bowl that Florida made, they kicked the field goal down 30 points to avoid getting shut out. So maybe lay off the talking a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, both of you guys have lost the last 2 years in a row. So let's chill with that a little bit too. But so, Michael, where are we at going forward, man? I think, to me, I think
Good
when
question.
I think when you go forward, I think that you have to redefine after this. I think you have to redefine your expectations, right? I think that the truth of the matter is this, right? You still have a talented roster. I don't care what anybody says in the thing or whatever, in the comments. You still have a talented roster. We know that. You still have a good coaching staff. They went 23-4 in the past 2 years. You still have and again, man, we said this in the preseason. This is a harder schedule than people think. People want to talk about Florida's number 1 schedule. Phil still has us as the number 12 schedule in the country.
Right.
So it's not like this team had a bunch of slouches. We said that there was a lot of coin flip games on the schedule, and a lot of them we think should go your way. But that doesn't mean that they are going to go your way. There's a lot of games where if you screw around, you can get beat. And so that is going to be interesting to see how a lot of these ones go forward playing out, because you have to have a team that has to learn how to win. I think a lot of that was big with last year's team is, when they ended that season the way they did, I think they learned how to win games. Yeah. And this is something with this new team with not a ton of leadership. You have to learn how to win games. But I think going forward, you redefine your expectations. And the truth of the matter is, all of your goals are still in front of you, man. This was one game. Like if you win out, like unless Georgia Tech goes, with 8-1 in the ACC and another team goes undefeated, you can still make it to the ACC championship, which can still put you in the playoffs. So all of that again is still on the table. Am I saying we're going to go to the playoffs? No. But I think we have to redefine the expectations, right? And I think so you will be looking at a team where your ceiling is probably like a 10-2 or, a 9-3 or something like that. And I think your floor may be a 7-5 and an 8-4. It's probably going to be, a little bit of a reset year. But as we talked about before, again, keep in mind, a lot of the more talented players on this team are the younger players. We have
Right.
to remember that. Like, there's not a lot of teams that lose 10 NFL draft picks and turn around and run it off at 13-0 again. Like, there's just
That's
not a
right.
lot of teams that do that. And we've seen consistently, even throughout camp, we saw where the younger receivers were the ones that were getting the attention. The younger running backs were the ones getting the attention. We know the younger quarterbacks, for what it's worth. No offense to DJU, we were more excited about those guys. We took a bridge guy for this year.
Right.
So the future is still fine. I don't think one loss is going to change the outcome of your program for the next 5 or 10 years. You
Yeah.
still have a lot of young talent, but I think this year you just have to redefine your expectations. But again, man, there is nothing that said if you would have been on Crack the Buck Nut or whatever whatever the Ohio State podcast is after they lost to Virginia Tech, I'm sure that year they probably wouldn't have came on there and said they were going to win the national championship with their third string quarterback. So again, man, I just want to at least say that, like, yes, this raised a lot of red flags, but yes, it was also one game. So we will see how it goes. And yes, I know Alabama's been doing it for a long time. Not everybody is Alabama. There are not many programs in the country that are. So we will see how things play out. But again, we can see a path that his team getting better. And, man, you just got to pick yourself up off the mat and go play the next game. Boston College is not going to feel sorry for you because you lost a game. So
Right.
the only thing you can do is go rebound and beat them and hopefully get your season back on track. Because as long as if you get that taste of success, man, you get that win at BC, you start stacking a couple wins. You got Memphis and Cal. These are 3 games that you feel good about. Then you got that test with SMU and Clemson back to back. But man, again, like, if you can just put a couple wins back to back, you feel a lot better about the direction of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, everybody has an off day, right? These are humans playing the game.
Yep.
These are humans calling the game. And so Nick Saban and that offensive defensive staff, Kirby Smart and that offensive defensive staff, they all have had games where they're like, crap, we shouldn't. Georgia should not have lost to Alabama last year. Everybody knew it, right? But they did. It happened, right?
Yep.
Alabama probably shouldn't have lost to Texas last year, but it happened, right? I can remember Alabama losing to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M. I remember Alabama losing to Ole Miss. Like, it happens. Sometimes you just get beat. What you got to do is you go back to the lab, you look at why you got beat, what you did wrong, and you fix it as best as you can. This is Mike Norvell always says, all we got. This is all we got, right? This is all we got. And you're not adding in other transfer players. You're not adding any other high school recruits. This is all you got. So you got to get back in the lab and you got to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it for Boston College. Yep. Yes, as a fan site, we do all the fun, what's the ceiling, what's the floor, and we're going to change all that. But listen, at the end of the dadgum day, it's about getting back in the lab and figuring out how to make this team better so you can beat Boston College. That's all they should be worried about. They shouldn't be worried about the playoffs. They shouldn't be worried about the ACC championship. They shouldn't be worried about Miami or Florida. They have never done anything in a while anyway since. They should be worried about Boston College. How do they get better to beat Boston College? If they focus on that and they figured out where it went wrong against Georgia Tech, they'll be just fine. Let us fans, we can worry about all that other stuff. They just need to focus on getting that offensive and defensive line better and figuring out the scheme. And to the person, this is the last comment I'm going to comment on, to the person who said, oh, so you're just saying your coaching staff suck. No, but they're humans. They have bad games, just like everyone else does. Your team is going to have a bad game this season, and you're going to be upset about it, just like we are. We're upset. Everybody has bad games. This is a great coaching staff. This is a coaching staff that was 23-4 before this game. Okay. Literally went on a 10-3 season, then a 13-0, 13-1 season last season, and has steadily shown each and every year that they've been at this program to get better. This is a great coaching staff. Mike Norvell is a great head coach. This team is going to figure out how to win. I have the utmost confidence in this coaching staff.
No, I agree, man, because people said the same thing after the COVID season. People said the same thing after the 0-4 start. And then when they won 10 games and then when they won 13 games, nobody had anything to say after that. It was, oh, well, I guess we were wrong about the guy. So I have confidence in Norvell to get it fixed. I think he's going to look at himself. That's a long flight home from Ireland. He's going to have a lot of time to think about what he did and did not do in this game. But yeah, man, it's not, I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. They are going to figure this out. and they'll be fine. Again, man, like I said, it's just there's a lot of reaction, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what any of these comments say. It doesn't matter how good you think your team is. It doesn't matter how bad you think our team is. What really matters at the same time is your team's probably going to, like you said, your team's going to have a bad day too. You got Florida fans in here that can't find a winning season, and when they do, they get blown out in the bowl game. You got Miami fans that haven't won anything in 2 decades in here. Like, I hope you enjoy typing these comments, because the last time y'all were relevant, the internet, you couldn't do this on the internet. So you couldn't post about it. Imagine never being able to post about being good on social media. So not worried about the comments. Like you said, man, it's all about them getting back into the drawing board and figuring this thing out, because at this point, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
I promise you, and this will be the last comment that I say, and then we'll get out of here, but I promise you that this team wanted to win the game more than the fans did. I promise you that those players have worked harder than anybody in this comment section. I promise you that these guys want to turn things around and get this going. You know what I'm saying? And I will never stop being mean to Florida fans. But I saw someone in the comments, stop being mean to us. Never. But this team wants this. They want to win. They're not just going to go, oh, we lost one game, we're not going to play the rest of the season or whatever. And no, Miami has not won as many national championships as Florida State since 2000. Apparently, you're not. And they did it. They won in 2001, but that was so long ago. I was a baby back then. But yeah, man. So I mean, again, we'll see. The game's got to get played. Again, if Florida State comes out and goes, and probably not likely, but if they go 11-1, all of this is going to be forgotten about. So just get back to the drawing board, get it fixed, and move on to BC. That's every game. Like you said, man, every game turns into a 1-game season, and that's all you can focus on at this point. There was positives, there was negatives, but I absolutely feel like that we're in good hands, and they will get this figured out. So, man,
That's right.
I think that's pretty much about all I have to say for this one. We've been over 2 hours. We've had a lot of viewers in here, probably a lot of haters and opposing fans because your team hasn't played yet. So excited to see how the season plays out. Again, man, I just think you got to reset your expectations. It was disappointing, but things happen. So it is what it is, man. But looking forward to the next one, a chance to rebound. I think that's the biggest thing. Every week is an opportunity to get better. Every week is an opportunity to turn your season around, and they're going to have to do it quick, because Boston College, again, they're not going to feel sorry for you coming in next week, man. So that's pretty much all I got to say. So any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, again, you're exactly right. I mean, you just got to get back in the lab and figure out what went wrong and figure out how to get better. Boston College is going to come in here. They're going to try to beat the brakes off of you, and you're the better team. And so you have to figure out how to beat them. And that means some corrections. That means you got to hurt some feelings, and you're just going to have to do that. But I trust this coaching staff. I trust Mike Norvell. I trust Adam Fuller to figure it out, because they're paid the big bucks to do that. And they've proven over time, again and again, that when their back's against the wall, that's when you see the best come out. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're going to see their best come out this next week.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out real quick to Joe Long, who says, peace, guys. He subscribed. We appreciate that. I know that there's a lot of trash going on in the comments and everything, but, we do appreciate those that actually kept it civil in the comments. And again, we know it's college football. We know it's trash talk. Everyone's just having a good time because Florida State lost. We expected this. It's not like we were hiding from it. We still came and got on here. We still said the good and the bad. But yeah, man, I mean, like I said, I'm going to be in Doak Campbell Stadium on Monday. I'm still going to be watching. I'm still going to be cheering. It just didn't change anything for me, other than it reset my expectations for the season. But again, that's why I said this was the most important game of the season when everyone thought I was crazy, because it was going to define your expectations for the season. And you were going to learn a lot about a team that you didn't know a whole lot about, because we had a lot of new pieces and a lot of new faces. So back to the drawing board. Just get ready for that next game, one game at a time, and go out and see how you can fix this thing. So that's going to do it for us, guys. Until the next one, we appreciate most of you tuning in. Some of you not so much. But at the same time, again, like I said, the more you comment, the more engagement it draws up. So it's actually good for the channel. So little did you know you were actually helping us out. But appreciate that. So until the next one, guys, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to watch through the rest of the season. Because again, like I said, man, we ain't hiding from it. We're going to be here the whole time. We're still here. We're in the paint. But we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. So thanks for watching, and go Noles.
Go Noles.